the City of Grand Haven Special City Council work session for October, not the worst session, not yet, work session for October 17th, 2022 is hereby called to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Fritz,
Here.
Lowe,
Here.
McLaughlin,
Here.
Cummins,
Here.
McNally.
Here. Our discussion items tonight, we're here to talk about special event fees. And I think we got a presentation by Shar. Is that where we're going to start, or what are we going to do, Ashley?
We'll start with an intro from Shar.
Intro from Shar, please.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Shar Sese, Community Affairs Manager for the City of Grand Haven. I'll just give a recap of what has been recommended to City Council for the public's insight, and then we'll have some conversation around the ideas and concepts that have been presented. Anytime that an applicant is looking to use public space, whether it is to use a park, they need road closures for a run, the use of tents, food trucks, anything on public land, use of amplified sound or consumption of alcohol on public property require council's approval. And we have created the special events process to get that in front of you and get applicants prepared for what fees and whatnot that will be entailed in that process. The recommendations that we were suggesting be considered by council are to set some guidelines and some deadlines for applications because of the influx of work on staff in the very busy summer months. So the recommendations that we were making include an application deadline for events beginning May and August. That application deadline would be April 1st. We suggested applications due July 1 for any event that's taking place September through December. Any type of peak season requests, maybe we have somebody who's looking at doing a special event fundraiser that they hadn't really thought about earlier on in the year, and they come to us, that we give the administration the opportunity to review that up front first and perhaps make an in-house decision before bringing anything to City Council on anything that's happening in the peak seasons. Provide discounts to off-season events, anything that's happening before Memorial Day or after Labor Day. Ticketed events, this concept came about as a way to create a legacy fund for maintaining Lynn Sherwood Waterfront Stadium. So ticketed events that would be held in Lynn Sherwood Waterfront Stadium would pay 10% of ticket sales. At the center, we charge $1 per ticket sale anytime Central Park Players has an event where they are selling tickets, and that is just one other way for us to generate revenue in that facility. So that's kind of the concept behind that to be applied at the stadium. Events such as Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, any of those types of events are really events put on by the city in commemoration of some type of national holiday. So there would be no fees for those types of events. So we also were recommending for nonprofits that are in the city with a city address that they have a fee waiver of up to $500. That typically would be any of our premium parks, Central Park, Lynn Sherwood Waterfront Stadium, City Beach. Other nonprofits that are outside of the city would receive a $200 fee waiver. That was one of our recommendations. And then anybody that is a for-profit or a non-resident would pay 100% of all of the fees. It might be prudent for us maybe to continue this conversation without the thought of our bigger nonprofit events such as Coast Guard Festival. That seems to be an anomaly in and of itself that maybe we could create or think about a special policy for an event like that instead of applying something like this. When we were thinking about the 10% ticket sale, it wasn't necessarily for that particular event, but for other ticketed concert events, more like the concerts that were happening throughout the summer put on by Courtyard Concerts.
Can I ask a quick question, Chart?
Yes.
Do we have any sense, I know Courtyard Concerts and I know Coast Guard Festival, but are there other regular ticketed events in the stadium?
I would say not regular. So we have other events that come forward to the city asking to have maybe a fundraiser where they're selling a ticket and having a band. So there are different nuances that come about with each application.
Yep. I have seen those down there where they have closed off the stadium and you need a ticket for admission. Okay, thank you.
So with that little overview, I really think that we've done more research trying to find a best fit, and I really have to say it's really all over the board. The application fees in different communities are vastly different, I think, based on what the community needs are, what activities already take place in their communities. And one thing that I researched most recently that I think is something that we could consider outside of what's been presented is whether or not an event is a high impact or a low impact event. We have many low impact events that perhaps don't need a lot of public services. It might be a walk or a run. It might be just a memorial for hospice. Those don't typically need a lot of public services. And that might be one other way we could evaluate the cost of applying the fee structure that was presented.
Would those kinds of events even require a permit?
They do currently. That's how we have done it in the past.
So if the Boy Scouts wanted to hike through Mulligan's Hollow, they should have a permit?
No.
No, okay.
Not for something like that. But
Okay.
if somebody is going to be down at the stadium, for example, or at the Brass River,
Right?
and they're going to bring people in to dedicate the Christmas tree and give out snacks and put ribbons on the tree, then that at this point in time has required an application.
Which guarantees them the space is there for their use.
Exactly.
Yep, okay.
Exactly, and that they'll have the things that they need. If they need the electricity on, it will be on.
Okay. So what can we do to move this process forward? I guess I'm asking council as much as Shar. Everybody had a chance, I think, probably to review the policy that the staff is recommending. Have we got feedback on it, or are there concerns?
Can I just ask a couple questions?
Sure.
Shar, in your memo, you say provide discounts to off-season event organizers. Well, what are those discounts? I mean, it's left blank.
Yes, it is left blank. I think that is something that as staff, we can make that recommendation to council as to what that discount would be. If we're spending staff time, that is something that we have collectively understood that we need to cover those costs. For example, if there was a nonprofit that was applying for something outside of the peak season, maybe we discount their application fee 50%. But as far as sending that public works staff person out to make sure that the electricity is working where they need it, we're under the understanding that we're expected to cover that time and material that staff person is providing that event. So this year we've done things a little bit differently than we have in the past. We have given everyone the event fees up front. Just so as the conversations have been taking place since last February about what's going to happen and where things might be in the future, so that everyone is aware that there could be some changes in how that might affect them.
My only other thing is on the nonprofits. I know you want to waive $500 in fees. My question is, there's some nonprofits that hold festivals, that hold different events, and the vendors come in. They charge their vendors $300, $400, $500 a piece to come and be part of the festival. Why are we waiving our fees when they are collecting that? I have a tough one to that one, to be very honest with you. I can see some of them. I mean, when you talk about the YMCA and the day camp, as far as I'm concerned, you charge them an event fee. You charge them, a one-time fee, and consider the whole, I guess the whole thing one. the whole event under one fee. Don't charge them. I mean, obviously, they can't afford $3,500 or $4,000 to support kids, but you know, just to give them that one fee would probably make it easier for them. But I have a hard time with you know, not-for-profits. Not-for-profits mean, I used to work for a not-for-profit who had a ton of money. So I don't feel that, you know, not-for-profits make a lot of money. And there's a lot of not-for-profits in this town that have nice fund balances, and I just think that we have, I personally have a hard time allowing a waiver of a fee when they're collecting a fee. That's me. And actually, one other question. You know, we have a Dana who was just hired. Has she reviewed all this? Is this something that she's been part of?
I believe she has reviewed that with Shar as far as staying up to date, and she had a family concern, so I apologize. She would have otherwise been here tonight. But she is up to speed with what's being presented
And she's okay with it?
currently, yeah.
Okay.
She may have ideas to bring down the line. If we were far from an agreement tonight, I would suggest that we kick it back so staff can work with Dana included on a revised proposal.
Okay. Thank you.
Mike, you got anything?
All I can tell you is that you gotta be very careful what you do, and you talk about nonprofits having lots of money. I tell you what, a lot of these nonprofits that do it here give back to our community, and they take care of a lot of things that here that we don't do. I'm not in favor of a whole lot of this at all, period. And since I've been on here, this is the first year we gave everybody a waiver. And the debt wouldn't be as much as it is if we would kept our process the way we normally do it, but we didn't do it this year. We decided that we're gonna give everybody a waiver. But when it comes to nonprofits and stuff like that, I like the process that we had, looking at and seeing what they do, how they fit into the community, what they give back. I've always did that when it come across my desk here, to making sure that whoever we gave a waiver to, it was contributing back to the community. And if we start cutting back on that, we're going to lose a lot of things that we have. And I hate to tell you, I've seen it happen before in other cities, that once you start cutting back, we don't have this little gem that people want to give back and help. So if you start doing that and charging these nonprofits that are doing things for us, pretty soon you're not going to get people donating back in to help us with other projects that we need to be done here. So I'm just reckoning to you guys to tell you that be very careful on how we move forward on this. I'm not in favor at all, period. So, because I've seen how it's worked over the years. I've lived here all my life. I've seen how people have contributed back to our community, done things for us. And anytime we ask them to do something, they do. But if you start stepping on their toes, you're not going to have your musical fountain. You're not going to have your boardwalk. You're not going to have people donating and doing that anymore. So you just got to be careful what you do.
Mike, can I ask a question? What you're saying is this last year we waived fees that we haven't waived in the past.
Oh, yes, we waived
But-
everything.
But, so who do you think, and I'm trying to sort this out myself, and I could use some advice. Who should we charge fees? Who have we charged fees? How about that? Do you know?
I have to go through the list. I don't have the list with me
No,
right
no,
now, but
I
I can
get
go
it,
back
but-
through. I can go through the whole list that we did all year long,
So-
saying the ones that we've.
Do you think, and I'm asking because I don't understand what the past policy was and how this changes the past policy. Do you think we will be charging people we haven't charged in the past under the new policy? And it would be mostly nonprofits?
Pretty way it looks like now, it looks like we're gonna be charging most everybody, even with a $500 waiver fee, if they have they use Lynn Sherwood and that, and as a councilman next to me here says that they bring food trucks and stuff in and they're charging a fee for that. Well, that's how they make their profit, so they can move on and give it back to the community. If they don't have an event and they can't raise money to do it, we're cutting off their hands and saying you can't do this no more. So, but we've had other process. If you want me to, I can go through and look at it and see what we have, what we charged, we didn't charge.
I'm just kind of interested in who you would charge under this new policy that we haven't charged in the past.
May I interject?
Yes.
The majority of times that applicants are coming forward to request fee waivers, It varies from organization to organization. Some nonprofits are in a really good financial position and do a really great job at their fundraising, and they put their fees in their fundraising process. Then there are other nonprofits that are maybe not as savvy. So when I look at the special event fee waivers that have typically been done, they haven't been for things that we are providing a service for. It may, when it comes to the $500, it would be your fee for the day's event. When we look at other communities, our fees are really low compared to other communities. There are multiple examples of other communities that pay or charge for the day of the event, for the setup of the event. And we don't do those things. So from my perspective, our fee structure is quite fair. And I did create a little bit of an extension to that Excel spreadsheet that showed what events would be impacted and what dollar amount they would be impacted by the changes. And granted, I'm not the nonprofit applying, right? So that my opinion might vary differently from theirs. And I have had plenty of conversations with applicants to say, you know, how much change would affect. And I would say if we sat down with each applicant individually, they would realize that there's not much that would change about their application and their costs based on the changes from my calculations.
Thanks, Shar. Ryan, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, the staff committee, was the staff committee pretty unanimous and feeling like this was the best at this point with all the research that you had done? Yeah. Yeah, you know, I kind of was giving it some more thought, and there are those outliers. Our Coast Guard Festival, I think the YMCA is an example. They don't have exclusive use, so, you know, they were putting a barricade around the whole area and using it exclusively, then, you know, I might feel differently. But I think there's some wiggle room there to negotiate on certain occasions. But, you know, I think it was. Some of this started with the last council, and Bob Manetta kind of said, well, why have fees if you're just going to waive them all the time? And I think over time, the council and staff historically have done, kind of accounted for the fact that there's costs, and we want to charge nonprofits and for-profits differently because there's some of these fees it's much lower for a nonprofit. It's much higher for a for-profit. And so some of that was already kind of baked in, and so I think it's good that, we've taken a look at this again, but now we're even adding another layer of even saying that, we'd even waive things beyond what's already kind of in our fee schedule. So I'm inclined to trust our staff and the recommendation they've come up with. They've been very upfront with folks that are applying, with the exception of, we look at Coast Guard Festival, the Y, their particular circumstances, but and point to the fact that we have differing fees already in our fee schedule. If we need to adjust those up or downwards as we go along, I think that would be reasonable. But we have fees, and there are real costs, and we're willing to waive some of those to have skin in the game. But I know as an event planner who's planned many events that if I know what my costs are going to be, then I'm going to then I know what at least I have to do to break even, what kind of sponsorships or donors I need to seek, or if I need to charge folks to get in, how much I need to charge, and you kind of bake that in, as long as you know well enough in advance. So I think that's probably where I'm at with it.
Karen?
First of all, I want to thank you, Shar, and all the staff, everyone that's been working, on this, because I think this whole thing started when we were trying to look for what are the rules around what is the process and what are the rules around what we waive and what we don't waive. And the reason why we wanted to do that, or at least I wanted to do that, was because I wanted to ensure that we were treating people fair and equitably. So it was more, I think, from my standpoint, and can't speak for everybody here, new to council, and I wanted to make sure we did have a process that was, had a lot of integrity in that. But I do agree with actually both Councilor Fritz and Councilor McLaughlin. I think they raised some valid points. Mr. Fritz is right. We have a lot of nonprofits that actually we partner with to provide some community services that we cannot, provide. And that's a really important thing that we need to remember, and we have to recognize that in all of this. But Councilor McLaughlin also raises a point. We can't waive everything. There's got to be a limit on, from a total amount or some structure like this fee schedule. So one thought I, had was that in business, typically if we have new events or some, way, you have incubation waiver, a total amount that you could. So once that's, you reach that, you don't waive anymore. You can apply some rules, but then you can make sure that you're still, it's sort of an early bird gets the worm, but also, there's a limit on how much, because we're not in such a financial position that we can give away the taxpayer money. We need a lot of, we need for a lot of other things. I also agree on the issue, at least of the Coast Guard Festival. The Coast Guard Festival is a part of Grand Haven's identity as a city, and I think that is a special case that we need to take offline and negotiate and discuss, because there is a lot that we do for the Coast Guard in terms of, because of the Coast Guard event, that we incur a lot in terms of a lot of expense, but it is a part of our identity as a city. So I think that has to be a little bit of a, different discussion than this strict schedule. Other than that, I feel like you all have put a lot in here. I feel like this is in a position where I could support going forward, knowing that you have to work through some of these kinks in the next year. But I think you've done, Char, at least what I wanted is at least some structure and some rhyme and reason for who we waive and why we waive it for this person and not for that person. And you and your team have done just that. So thank you.
I think I also, Char, would like to say thank you for a fine work product, because I know we're asking you to split multiple babies, and you did a pretty good job. I see Kevin's point when he talks about not-for-profits with lots of money, and I'm not sure exactly how, but I would distinguish between the not-for-profits that exist just to hold a public event and the not-for-profits that really are fundraising in their event. But maybe we shouldn't. I mean, we all have, I guess I would say, events that are near and dear to our hearts. And I agree with the Coast Guard Festival. You'll be surprised to hear. And I agree with the day camp. And I would add Music on the Grand to that group, because it's a group. One of the things that happens is, and certainly like anyone else, they could go out and try to find sponsorship, but that group has been going on a long time on a shoestring, and it's a great activity that's good for the community, and particularly good for old people who like to dance and young people who like to dance. So I'm not sure how we move forward on this. Do we go into a regular meeting and have a resolution? Are we still in the discussion phase? I think you've given us as best as possible what we asked for, Char, and it's and that says a lot, I'm just going to say. So so what do we do now, Ashley? That's the question. Karen?
Oh, I was just going to ask just another point. I've been listening to all the different points of view, and I see Joyce here, so I'm going to go ahead and say this too. I think there's other things that, of course, the Chamber of Commerce or Main Street DDA, we're trying to attract people for new events, and they've never done anything here before. That's another sort of incubator activity, and I'm not feeling the need for City Council to have to oversee all of that, but I think it would be nice to have a sort of a little bucket of waiver funds available to help, if we think it's going to help stimulate, that kind of an event, get going, but they've never held it here before, let's say, as a way to attract. So I'm not opposed to those kind of ideas at all. I just wanted to see some structure, some fairness and equity and, and logic to why we would waive one and not another, besides the fact that we know this person and we don't know that person. So anyway, sorry, I just wanted to interject that. For the new events, I just think that's another, another piece of it that we want to maybe get some feedback from the chamber or Main Street DDA.
And I guess I'd provide a counterpart to that, which is, and not necessarily disagreeing, but I feel like we are saturated with events. And I think naturally some of them are going to die off in the relatively near future because the people who've held them on their backs for years are waning, it's the course of, there is a cycle. So maybe it is good to bring in new events behind it, but I'm not sure our staff can support a great number of new events, so I'm not sure I would support underwriting new events until we have a more balanced approach to the events we got. Everyone who wants to can apply for an event, and so I get that maybe my position's not entirely consistent when I say these are my favorite events. Let's take care of them. But underwriting new events, I think we have to think about how many events we can support in a summer. New events outside of the summer, 100% behind. New events within the summer, maybe not as much. I don't know. That would be my thoughts on that.
Can I ask one more question? Shar, in your procedure, on the application process, which is nicely laid out, is there going to be an internal schedule for approval? So that when you or Dana get the application, what's going to be the process, the process within City Hall that's going to get this to the finish line so that it doesn't sit on somebody's desk for one reason or another?
Sure. Typically, when we get an application, we try to get it processed immediately. We give our staff that is on the review team, so you have somebody from Public Safety, somebody from Public Works, the DDA is part of the review team, and then someone from the city manager's office is also a part of that review team. We give our team a week to review because we all have things to do, and try to get back with myself, soon to be Dana, within that week's period of time, so that then we can get things to the Parks Board if it needs to go, and then on to you. So I think we'll have to internally make a couple of tweaks to our process as it relates to anything, if there's any changes, and if these recommendations are adopted, we'll have to just tweak internally so that we make sure that everything is happening in a timely manner for our applicant.
Thank you.
And I do note, just having been in a couple meetings with Dana so far with event organizers, as well as she has a good idea of how she'd like to proceed with intake appointments with event organizers, in which she would lay out, here is now, this is when you submitted, here's the Parks Board meeting when this will come out, here's the date of the City Council meeting in which you can expect your approval, including the staff internal review time. So really laying it out well to the event organizer and just communicating.
I frankly think the more that we can handle administratively, once
Yeah.
City Council feels comfortable with it.
Yep.
Somebody could be held up for 3
I
months.
think we all agree. I'm gonna stop right now and adjourn the special work session. So my question is, does Shar need to stick around to finish up? Have we got other things here we need to talk about?
Nope, we can bring this back at your first meeting in November.
Is that all right with everybody?
Sure.
Shar, thank you very much. All right, the special work session is adjourned, and we're going to swing right into the regular city council meeting. Good to go, Scott? Okay. The City of Grand Haven regular city council meeting of Monday, October 17th, 2022 is hereby called to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Fritz,
Here.
Lowe,
Here.
McLaughlin,
Here.
Cummins,
Here?
McNally.
Here. We do not have a pastor here tonight to deliver an invocation, so we're going to swing straight into the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almost sneezed all over you, Karen.
Oh, you did?
Sneezed all over you. I'm like, oh, hold it in.
Okay.
Just didn't articulate that very well.
I would entertain a motion to accept the consent and regular agendas at this point.
So moved.
And support.
Mayor, I'd like to move item F to new business.
Okay, hang on. Item F from the consent agenda, move as
To,
item F in
Item
new
F,
business. Does
yeah.
that sound all right?
Yeah.
Maria, can you follow that?
F to F. That's pretty good.
thank you.
You bet. Okay,
Do we have a second for that?
yes, I think Councilmember Fritz seconded it.
I did.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. All right.
Your Honor, one point of order comment. Maria, I just want to request that when we move something from the agenda, can we reflect in the minutes exactly what we moved versus just saying we moved F or,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
to here?
I can,
Because many times in our documentation, we have the original agenda, but then we don't know.
and it's a
what the
good
topic
point.
was.
It's a good point also, I think, Karen, for the members of the audience. Item F in the consent agenda that's just been moved to new business for discussion reads, approve marina transient rates at level E for Sunday through Thursday, level G for Saturday and Sunday, and rate 1 for seasonal slips. And it's been moved to new business, and we will discuss it later in the meeting. Does that work?
Yes.
It's a good idea. Okay, at this time, it's the first call to the audience, one of two opportunities. Members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time. Those not physically present who would like to call in may dial 616-935-3285. And if the phone continues ringing, please remain on the line. We will take all callers. Doug?
Hi, I'm Doug Vance, 100 Washington. Jeremy's going to present a presentation later about parking, which I was really excited about until I realized it was for overnight parking. And that has never been an issue with me, but I just wrote down some thoughts, so maybe you can take these to heart as we're thinking about the parking. Imagine what it would be like if we talked to the residents to get their perspective on parking rather than just assuming we have the right answer without their input. Imagine what it would be like if we were interested in putting residents first over revenue generation. Imagine what it would be like if we didn't discriminate against lower income residents and where they get to park. Imagine what it would be like if we listened to constructive solutions rather than making decisions based on biased surveys. Imagine what it would be like if we worked together for the betterment of the downtown community where many residents have chosen to live. Imagine what it would be like if we allocated public safety payroll and activities to actually concentrating on public safety. Imagine what it would be like if we were thankful for the taxes and numerous fees that residents pay, which are allocated to the salaries of city employees and services. Imagine what it would be like if we really cared about other residents and what they have to deal with to get to their home as much as we care about where we get to park without ever having to think about if we could get a ticket that we can't really afford to pay due to the increased costs we are dealing with in today's economy. Imagine if we spent a fraction of the time we spend on rooting for our favorite sports team, doing our hobbies, or any of our other special interests, but caring about our fellow residents and the challenges that they have to deal with every day. Since public safety has told me that parking is the #1 complaint they have to deal with, imagine actually addressing the issue with public safety to come up with a solution that would allow public safety to be the #1 issue they are paid to deal with. Jeremy's going to make his presentation, and I would just ask that you consider reconsidering their recommendation, because they're going to make a presentation that deals with overnight parking, and that's not the issue that I've been trying to present to you week after week, month after month. Quote somebody I've just heard, "Let's treat people, residents, fair and equitably." Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, council members. I'm Greg Coyle. I'm the CEO of the Tri-Cities Family YMCA. I'd like to just speak a minute on the subject of the special event fees that was in the working session. And I want to begin by saying I appreciate the conversation so far and what I've heard. Thank you very much for that. I also want to tell you that the YMCA is going to be celebrating its 60th year in our community next year. And balancing a budget is something we're hard at work at as well right now at the Y. And we're all facing some very uncertain times. But I'd like to just comment a little bit for the council's discussion that I understand will happen in November when you finalize this, and that is to understand that the Y is a nonprofit. It's more like a small business, I would say, more than anything else. It's a small business in the community that's been operating here for 60 years. It is not millage supported. It is supported primarily on its fees, grants, and philanthropy. The two areas of concern that we have would deal with our two race events, and I know that all of you received my letter dated at the end of last month, kind of highlighting some of our concerns. And these concerns are not irrespective of the fact that staff had a tough job to do to figure out how to manage this. So I want to comment on that as well. Our race events, we do feel, may have a modest effect after talking with the staff about the impact of the proposal. But we do understand there's some unresolved issues that could impact the race events, and so we're still a little unclear about the impact there. We note, though, in our letter that the race events do bring a pretty significant economic development to the community, and we don't want that to be minimized either. The second is the day camp, and I heard the words of many council members related to the day camp, and I appreciate that. I wrote down as I was hearing you talk that both our run-walk events and day camp, from a city perspective, I hope would be considered fairly low impact. Our race events are actually open road. We do very little road closures, although there is probably some impact in coordination with the city. And our day camp has, I think, very, very limited impact on the city. However, I think they are very high impact to the community. And I think that's important for you all to consider as you're debating the final decision. Our concern with the full fees are significant. We could never have afforded the full fees, and know that that's not the consideration of the council, at least in the staff's proposal. The 10% fee would be about a 500% increase of what we are dealing with today. So that would require some pretty significant fundraising on our part. If that's my bell, I don't know.
Finish your thought, please.
But I would just say, I'd ask you to consider, whether or not the impact that the day camp has on the community would keep us consistent perhaps with the other organizations that the council was considering some exemption for or special consideration. We would like the council to continue that thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, it's me, Ashley. I've been here a few times actually already, and one of the residents that pays year-round to live where I live, and I don't have a parking spot by where I live. I don't really like that at all. I almost didn't move there because of it, because I did not want to be inconvenienced, because I'm a very busy lady and constantly running around back and forth between work and errands and whatever else I'm helping with that day. And normally it's not an issue, right? Like now that it's the off season, that's great. Like I actually can park in those places that you allot me to park in overnight. But during the busy season, or even like, I don't know, probably any Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, no, not really. I don't like have a great parking option for, like if people are parking there, I can't park there. Do I have to go move my car at 10 o'clock at night, like, because I can't just park? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, just friggin', I bought the pass, like, it was $100 for the year. Why the hell does that do nothing? Why do you give no fucks for us residents? I don't appreciate this. And this has been going on for years and years, and if you guys are just gonna bypass it, like whoever the else heck was supposed to be in charge, then what the hell? Like, we live there. You really don't care about us? I don't know, I'm the only person that shows up other than I feel like it's a waste of my time, and I would rather be doing other things. But here I am complaining about how parking is an issue. When I got towed, there was a piece of paper on a metal sign that I didn't bother to read because I didn't think it was that important, and I got towed, and it was against the law, and that was my fault. But they didn't even use that spot for that craft show. And when I wanted to pay my parking ticket, or no, I wanted to fight it, I was told it was a bad idea. What city can't I fight a parking ticket in? How corrupt are you guys? Like, I'm really questioning some things here. I believe in a lot of conspiracy theories, and you guys are not helping my problems here with that. Because, like, if I can't fight a parking ticket because they told me that I would get, like, a way worse infraction than a civil infraction, and it would cost me way more money, and it's not a good idea, what the hell? Okay. I think that's everything. I went over the... Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Jim Hagan, 400 Lake. What I'd like to do is I'd like to read the email that I sent to the city administration and the city council concerning the fees that were charged for the parking rentals when the first block of Washington was closed. And it's entitled Raise Parking Space Rental to $250 per square foot per month. And let me go ahead. Council and City Administration, I found out at the last Recruitment and Retention Committee meeting that the city charged the businesses in the first block of Washington only 25 cents per square foot per month for the parking spaces they occupied this past summer season. Yeah, it's sort of like loose change, right? 25 cents? I mean, this sounds like parking meters from 5 decades ago. And this amount is equal to $45 per month for a typical 9-foot by 20-foot parking spot. This is a ridiculously low rate. I mean, it is ridiculously low. Parking spaces can generate at least $15 to $20 per day, which is 10 times more. What I want to see, and I think a lot of people would like to see, is raise those rates now. The city needs the money. We can't keep making excuses. The citizens of Grand Haven need to be fairly compensated for parking that is commandeered by special interest groups. Why are you giving away resources without being fairly compensated? Why not have an auction for the spaces and actually see what they are valued at by the community? Sounds good to me. The restaurants and beverage establishments didn't even staff the outside tables during the majority of daylight hours. But you know why? If you don't pay for it, you don't value it. It's like the interns. People are getting away from not paying interns because they weren't valued. How many times did you hear, oh, well, I had them doing some copying, they were just doing this and that. It's not important stuff. So we need to make the restaurants and the beverage establishments pay what the community paid for those parking spots. I think the downtown residents would pay much more than $45 per month for a dedicated downtown parking spot on the first block. Doug, can you give me some support on that one? Do you realize that the entire charge for the parking spaces on that entire block was less than a typical monthly apartment rental or mortgage? To me, that's a disgrace. I looked up for 233 Washington or 322 Washington, which is the old Fifth Third building, what they pay per square foot for their first floor, greater than 1,000. So it's not the $42 per square foot per month, it's the 21. And we're charging 25 cents. So I conclude with raise the rates to $250 per month. I mean, $250 per square foot per month in 2023. The city needs the revenue.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, so we're not going to continue the special work session. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as modified.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Lowe, second by McLaughlin. Any discussion? Would you read the roll, please? Well, actually, how about read the agenda first?
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mike.
Approve the special council meeting minutes on September 28 and October 1st, and special work session and regular council meeting minutes of October 3rd, 2022. B, approve the bills memo in the amount of $1,877,260.62. C, approve the State of Michigan's MI Deal road salt contract for the 2022/2023 winter season with Compass Minerals America, Inc. of Overland, Kansas for 600 tons of salt at $63.08 per ton, delivered for a total amount of $37,848, and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary documents. D, approve a change order in the amount of $12,634.23 for additional engine repairs to truck number 50-16 and the not to exceed price totaling $40,755.25 from West Michigan International of Wyoming, Michigan. E, approve the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy Drinking Water Asset Management Grant Agreement in the amount of $582,335 and authorize the Director of Public Works to execute the necessary documents. And F, accept federal grant funds from the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program in the amount of $152,300 with matching City of Grand Haven budgeted capital improvements funds in the amount of $64,987.71, and to approve the low bid to purchase of self-contained breathing apparatus units per specifications in the amount of $217,287.71 from Phoenix Safety Outfitters, Springfield, Ohio.
Ryan, you got something?
Yeah, just a couple comments to make. One, grateful to our staff and engineers and the collaboration with public safety and some other municipalities to really just stay persistent in seeking grant dollars here. You know, we have yeah, well over $700,000 that are coming back to the community because they stayed persistent over several years in trying to bring some grant dollars this way. Wanted to ask Derek real quick on the Eagle Drinking Water Asset Management Grants. So we're lucky we got some of those Booker funds and then some of these funds, so that's excellent news. So thank you and the engineering staff for your work on that. Is this going to help offset some of the costs that we had set aside for the asset management plan that?
Yes, Derek Gatis, Public Works Director for the city. Good evening, Your Honor and Council.
Hi, Derek.
We'll actually be able to reduce those down. This is covering some other, specifically drinking water, asset management, inventory management requirements that we're gonna have to do in-house. And so we can actually still do some of those in-house and get reimbursed, so that's a positive thing. Or we can, if we don't have the staff, we can hire a contractor for that. So, but it will reduce I think it was like $335,000. That portion will be covered by that. So, and I just want to note one thing. Normally, we have the mayor and the clerk to execute the documents, and in this case, I outlined in my resolution myself. The state is coming up with some very stringent signature requirements, and so some of these documents can't be signed manually anymore. And it's a really stringent process to get those credentials through the state. And so a full-time staff like Maria would be pretty easy. Your Honor, if you'd want to, it's a really fun process to go through and like quarterly updates, and we can get you signed up for that. And I think long-term, we're gonna probably have to get you to that. But to get this sewed up before November.
I'm 100% okay with Maria signing the document.
Well,
Maria, if they give us $582,000, you can sign anything you want.
Well,
and I'm happy to be credentialed too, Derek, if that's necessary, but.
We'll get there. MDOT has proposed it over the years, and there's some communities that are really small that just don't have those type of, full-time staff and resources. So, but it's coming where you're going to have to, or everybody who's going to sign documents are going to have these credentials, and it's really not just one for one department. There's literally one for every department in the state almost. It seems like so.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'll get back with you with a report to the city manager about what those savings actually will be.
Yeah, and you don't have to put staff time in if you don't want to. I was just curious.
Oh, absolutely.
A chunk of that. So.
Okay.
But I think we all echo Ryan's sentiment, Derek, that this is good news for the city, and we appreciate your diligence in seeking it out.
Awesome. Thank you.
By far, anytime we can get money coming back is really good, so thank you. I just want to say again, out of the 1.8 million, 1.1 million is tax collection again, so our bill is not really as high as what you think we're paying out here. And also, I got a question on the road salt. Is that the same rate? How much of an increase did we get, so people at home know where we're at on buying road salt again? I think I ask this every year when it comes in, so.
I think Matt's got the answer for us.
He does.
Matt Wade, Streets and Utilities Manager, Public Works. Yeah, it's $1 more than it was last year. So that's per ton. Overall, in the last 3 years, we're down about $20,000 from our previous salt purchases. So we're working our way down.
When we go down, do we put something else on? Like, do we use sand or?
Yeah, we started using a chloride product, a liquid chloride, and that's really reduced our use of salt and offset the cost quite a bit.
Yep, nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
Sounds good.
Okay. So we've got a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda as modified. I think we're done discussing. Would you please call the roll, Maria?
Bo,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. We were going to have a presentation at this point on downtown residential parking recommendations by Jeremy Swiftney, Main Street DDA Executive Director. Evening, Jeremy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You nailed my name, that's good. Figured you would, but I'm here tonight to talk to you about downtown Grand Haven residential parking. That was something that you had given some direction to the DDA to discuss, look at what we currently offer for residents, both overnight and during the day, and come back with you with some information. So that's what we're going to be doing tonight. So we'll start kind of, I know everybody really loves talking about parking, but we'll start with what the current options are. That was the first thing we did when we talked at our recruitment and retention committee and at our board level, is what options do people have? What can they do? They can park currently with the overnight permit. It's $120 per year, which we'll get to in a second. They can park in I used business names, not the actual city lots, because nobody knows what lot 3 is, but like Tippeview lot, behind the surf shop in Anna's house, Fortino's and Copper Post lot, the Aldea/Hostetter's lot, behind the museum, Boers, and then the 3rd Street and Franklin lot, which would be on the south side of Franklin there. There are private lots that people can have agreements with, like the Covenant Life lot, Buffalo Bob's lot behind their building, the Eagles or the BDR lot in the 3rd block, Elks lot, Capstone, just outside of the 3rd Street area. So there's a lot of private lots that people do create agreements, a private agreement with, where they can park their car in that area. And then there's obviously public streets, April through November. Obviously, we don't want Matt to plow into our cars. But in Franklin and Columbus, I just focused on those in the downtown area. So there's the options for current people where they can park as a resident in the downtown area. Looked at like what parking permits does the city issue, since obviously we don't handle the parking at all. It's handled by public safety and by the city. There's 26 total transferable permits that are out there. They're issued at $10 per month. There's 60 annual permits issued at $120 per year, 72 temporary. Those are at $20 per month. Those are people that may come in for a month or two, but you can buy those on a monthly basis. And then obviously overnight is available to anybody. If you're downtown, you can do $5 a night to leave your car overnight if you needed to.
What's a transferable permit, Jeremy?
So that's transferable between if I bought it, say I live downtown, I bought it, but I knew I was selling my property in the next 6 months or something, I could buy it and transfer it to one person. The next person could not then transfer it again. So it's basically like an annual permit, but I'm knowing that I'm going to transfer that to one other person throughout the year. Parking brochure, we'll get to that here in the next slide, but there is a brochure that's handed out anytime somebody purchases an annual permit or a transferable permit. Really, anytime anybody purchases one other than the overnight, which is purchased at the kiosk downtown, they're given this parking brochure, which is something that the city created, goes over rules, goes over restrictions, how enforcement's handled, who to contact if there's any issues. It's also very available on the city's website. It's the first thing that pops up if you Google downtown residential parking in Grand Haven.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
Jeremy. Could you go back one
Yes.
slide? So the temporary permit is on a monthly basis?
Yes.
Why is the temporary permit $20 a month and the transferable permit $10 per month? Is that in addition to paying an
No.
annual fee, or?
So the transferable is basically an annual permit. The $120 per year or $10 per month is what it figures out to be. The transferable is, though, like I said, if you're trying to have one other person, like if I own something or I lived there and then I know I'm going to sell it to the next person, that's for that use. The temporary permit is more for like a short-term rental person or somebody who may come and spend 2 months in the summer but no longer. They can do that at $40 per year versus paying the $120 per year for an annual permit, since they're only here for a shorter period. It's also available, I think Doug mentioned a couple months ago, if somebody is coming into that apartment to help somebody else while they're recovering, that's something where you could do that as well. You could do that per month at $20 per month and be able to park your car overnight in the downtown area.
And Jeremy, everyone who gets one of those permits has to reside downtown. Is that true?
Yes, public safety will make some sort of designation on that. Like if I were living downtown and broke my foot or something and had my parents come and help me, they would most likely say, yes, we'll issue a permit to that person, even though your address is not there because of the circumstance. But overall, yes, you have to.
But the permits are specifically
specific
really
to an address.
to serve the needs of downtown residents. Okay.
And what do they get that an overnight available to all at $5? Are there special spaces that they
No,
can park
it's
in?
any of the spaces that anybody can use. That's if, if for instance, somebody maybe had too much to drink and didn't want to drive home and took a taxi, they would be able to do that safely without having to have their car ticketed or towed. They could do that overnight. Or if somebody's just visiting for one night or 2 nights, they could do a 1 or 2 night stay where they're spending time with a friend.
But if you, even the $5 tickets, or permits, sorry, I think you need to be out of the lot by 9 a.m.
The rules would basically follow after that. So if you didn't move your car, you're on the 3-hour parking if you parked in a 3-hour spot, yeah.
So if I read your summary there correctly, we have 86 people that are basically doing it on an annual basis.
And 72,
And then 72
some
that-
sort of temporary,
It
yeah.
could be winter, could be summer,
Yep.
it's just a few months out of the year, and it's on a 20, is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
But there are other downtown residents whose buildings have parking.
Yeah, there are other downtown residents, which
There
we'll
are
get to
others-
some slides
Right.
too.
And there are others whose buildings don't have parking but have made private arrangements.
Yes, yeah, like if you look at Cutler House, I talked to a number of residents there. They have a private agreement with the Elks to park 1 car in those spaces. Some of them only have 1 car, like if you are like me and my wife, we have 1 car. But if you have 2 cars, there's a number of residents who live downtown, Roger and Karen Bergman, for instance, who have 2 cars. They have no dedicated parking. They purchase 2 parking passes and then move around, park where they need to so that they don't have to go move their car every 3 hours, or they do if they need to be behind the building.
Are the transferable permits, it's $10 a month, they pay the $120 per year, or do they just pay it on $10 a month?
They do it at the $10 per month. That's the way it's listed on the city's information. My guess would be it's that way so that somebody could pay the difference if you're selling it. So the person pays for what they use, the other person for what they're going to use.
Okay, thank you.
So the brochure, right here, there's 2 pages, so there'll be the next page as well. So this is one side of it. As I said, it goes over different restrictions. On the next side, we'll see kind of a map, but it goes over on this side. If you have permit questions, if you have enforcement or citation issues, who do you contact? It talks about the rules and regulations, so it's a real dry read in there. And then the back side is the map and a picture of the kiosk. So this is a map of recommended spaces, but not required spaces of the downtown area. The red is private parking, so they highlight that space so people know overnight parking in that would not be allowed unless you had an agreement with the owner. It's basically a private lot. The owner could tow the vehicle if they so chose.
Just a comment on this. I did go through the materials earlier, Jeremy, and there, just one recommendation is to have some consistency in labeling and the color of the legend. But one of the problems with this overview piece is it does not show which of those open for overnight parking have no time restrictions on it and which ones do. And there's a lot of little pockets here that I have some concerns about. But anyway, I keep going, but we'll get into some of those, but
I would say that this was provided and put together by the city. I would say it's ripe for a refresh on it as well. So at a minimum, I would say that should come out of this, is that we need to refresh this a bit so people do know where they can and can't park. And if that means it needs to be more than the 2 pages, so be it as well. So we'll kind of go over some information that different committees asked me, different people asked me, so I wanted to present to the board. We have currently 15 different buildings in the downtown that have residential use without a dedicated parking space for the building. That's buildings, not actual units. So there's 15 total buildings in the downtown that do not have specific parking for their business or for their residents. There's 462 private spaces in the downtown 3-block area. There's 856 public parking spaces. 326 of those, this one was news to me, I thought it was closer to 50-50, and I work down there all the time. 326 are time limited, 530 are unlimited. I thought it was pretty close to break even, and there is abundantly more unlimited where you do not have to move your car every 3 hours parking spaces. Counting the street parking, there's 414 overnight public parking spaces, but during the off-season, 369. Now, during the off-season, the 3-hour parking is gone as well, so those spaces would all be open, but 414 different parking spaces that you can park in overnight. 304 of those spaces also have unlimited time. So 304 of the downtown parking spaces, you would not have to move your car if you left it there overnight during the day for the 3-hour parking restrictions. This is just a brief overview of the number of parking spaces total in each of the lots. In the Tippecanoe, 66, Surf Shop, 76, Fortino's, 81, behind Aldea, 69, Boers, 61, Third and Franklin has 55 spaces, and then the streets, again, there's 41 on Franklin, 34 on Columbus, though some of those are time restricted, so it's not all of those are unlimited. When we go over each of the lots, it'll kind of go over each ones that are time limited. And then, as Karen said, when we redo the brochure for the city, I would recommend that we do have a key that's equal amongst everybody, so it's understandable. Just a brief map of the downtown area. The green is good. Green is, you can park overnight parking. Red, no parking overnight. And then the orange would be private lots. I wanted the red to kind of show up as a no parking. So you can't park overnight on Washington or the side streets. You can't park on Harbor. And then the Harborfront lot, because of the the agreement that's with the building owner there, those are all no parking for overnight parking spaces. The rest of the lots that you see on there, it's all available for overnight parking. The public safety may have a couple recommendations as to where they could and couldn't park originally, but each lot is signed as overnight parking. So there's not a, you have to park in this spot only or this row of cars only for overnight parking. You can park in any of those spaces overnight. So all of the south side lots are all available. The north side is also available. In the second block, the third block is all private, and the first block is a shared agreement, so there's no parking overnight in that lot.
So the green is really what we're talking about here, that's open for residents or
Yes.
people who have passed. And of that, you were saying that 40% are, have a time restriction on it, and 60% of that green is
It's
no time restriction.
It's actually higher. It's like
Higher,
70-some% is no time restriction in
Okay.
those lots.
Okay.
When we get into it, it's quite
would-
high when you
Yeah.
realize it, like where they can and can't park. So
The time restriction
yeah,
is
well-
between 6 and 9 a.m.? Is that the,
Yeah, so the 3-hour parking starts around 9 a.m., runs till 5 p.m. So between 6 and 9, there's only a couple parking spaces, and I'm talking a couple, like 4 of them that you can't park in, and that's for trash removal. So those aren't going to be highlighted on this review because there's 4 of them which are actually on the next map for Surf Shop, and then there's 2 of them on First Street, which is not for overnight parking anyway. And that's just so that the trash compactor can be lifted and dumped without somebody getting their car backed into in the middle of the street.
So basically, somebody was parking overnight. They could, in fact, still park their car there until about noon,
Yes.
roughly.
Yeah. Realistically,
I mean, if one of our police
Yeah.
officers came by and chalked a tire, they'd have 3 hours.
3 hours from that point,
from 9 a.m.?
or whenever
So
they
they
chalk the
shouldn't-
tire, technically,
Right.
yeah.
So if they have a parking pass overnight and they parked in those, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And those are only on the ones, because there are other.
Those are on time
other
limit.
Yeah,
public
only on the
lots.
time limited ones.
Yeah,
They're,
yeah, you know.
yeah.
So then, some of the residents that are there, they work at oddball hours, which has been to our council many times, and told us how they got towed. There are spots there for them to be able to park so they could sleep.
Yeah,
Not-
yeah, we'll go
not-
through each of
not-
the
Not
lots.
be interrupted, and you have to get up and move their cars.
Right.
Because I know when I worked third shift, it was very difficult to get any kind of sleep. And if you're working third shift and you gotta get up 2 hours after you've been to sleep to move your car, it's not very good for you.
Right, yeah.
But you have spots. Is there any way possible we can make a few more spots in those areas that we have high residents? Because if we're encouraging residents to come down there in these buildings that don't have parking, we should have some kind of area for them to be also. I can see the new buildings we had built, we required them to put parking spaces in. But these buildings have been there since downtown's been incorporated, you know,
Yeah.
and they don't have parking.
Yeah, you're right. There are a lot of them without it. At this point, we feel like the number of spaces is good. We are still discussing whether the 3-hour parking makes sense with the time frame that it currently has, or if that season of 3-hour parking may need to be shortened, but that was something we wanted to continue to have a conversation on, talk to both the residents and the merchants that are down there, since the merchants footed a large portion of the bill through the parking assessment, trying to figure out what does and doesn't make sense for everybody. It is a downtown area, so having transient 3-hour parking is very important as well, so that the businesses can continue to thrive, have people coming and going, and not have a resident that may be parked in a space that could be open for somebody shopping as well. So we're trying to balance that, but at this point we felt like there was a large number of parking at 304 spaces in that downtown area that somebody could park in overnight and not have to move their car at all. Whether they worked second shift, third shift, first shift, it doesn't matter what time they come and go, there would be options for them to park their car within roughly a block radius at worst from their space.
Yeah, I was looking at the one behind Doug's place there. You got 2 of them on the side of the street there, but there's that whole center lot there. If you had them and you moved them all to the southern part of the lot, you can gain a couple of spots for them to live, to park.
Yeah, well,
there.
when I get to each of the lots, I'll talk
for you
through.
to think about.
Yeah, we'll talk through kind of our conversation and what the DDA recommended and why our committee felt that it wasn't a good space. So like the surf shop lot, for instance, that was all near the kiosk, that space. There are the barrier-free are all unlimited time frame parking spots. None of the barrier-free spaces are 3-hour. So in this lot, for instance, overnight parking being allowed, there are 20 unlimited parking spaces where you can park. There are 56 that would be time limited in that lot. So there's a 20 space minimum in that lot where you could park your vehicle, not have to move it. The Tippecanoe lot is wide open. It's not a 3-hour lot. It is fully open for overnight parking, and you can park your car there. There is a limit on how long you can leave a car parked in a parking space. It is 72 hours. Anything past that, public safety may deem it as abandoned. So you would have to move your car like every 3 days, but that's probably the same as on a city street as well. I didn't necessarily research that, but people don't want cars sitting overnight. But this lot, fully open for overnight parking. There's no spaces where somebody couldn't park overnight. The Copper Post lot that you were talking about, Mike, we talked a lot about why the spaces are and where the space they're at. So this is a very good example of why we selected those spaces. They do look like they're on one side, but at the end of the day, that's actually about middle of the block. So we're trying to think about residents on both sides of the block and put it centralized. We also talked when we did the parking spaces about what if all of the parking spaces were further out. If you look at a community like a Holland or a Petoskey, residents can park behind the buildings, but they have to move their car in the morning. They can't even park behind their building. In Holland, they have to be a block away. In Petoskey, they're further out. But here, the thought was if somebody's coming down Franklin and all of those spaces on the Franklin side look like they're full, people may not pull into the lot or may not see additional parking being available. So when the DDA talked about this, when council approved this in the early aughts, this was the plan that they went with because it felt the most centralized to everybody in that block. So that way people may have to walk from one end or the other, but we're not having people walk a full block. It may only be a half block. So in this lot, there's 27 total unlimited parking spaces. 54 are time limited. So there's a pretty large number of spaces in that lot where you could leave a car overnight, not have to move it the next morning, as well as just across the street from, say, the Copper Post where the Tippecanoe lot would be as well.
Plus street parking, right, Jeremy?
Plus, yeah, street parking, I didn't even...
Not in the
yeah.
winter, but
Yeah, I didn't even put the street parking on here for that reason, because the winter it's not allowed. But during the winter, these lots are all not 3-hour. They're all unlimited time from November 1st through May 1st. So the May 1st through November 1st are times where it's a 3-hour limit. Other than that, it's not a 3-hour limit. So that's what I was talking about. We're still discussing, does that actually make sense, or should that season be shortened where maybe it's Memorial Day to Labor Day? Obviously, picking a specific day is more difficult because public safety and public works may have to have different signs for a different date. But if you were to say a Memorial Day, for instance, that everybody knows what day that may fall on. So we're still discussing the logistics of what that could look like. Does the season need to be shortened? Does it make sense to go all the way to November 1st for our merchants and stakeholders and our residents, or does it make sense that that number may need to be in September? So that's a conversation we're still having, and we look forward to hopefully having a recommendation to you as well if we decide that there may need to be a change.
Your Honor, So, just a couple of comments here before you move through the other slides. You know, when I look at this, I think there's three questions council needs to answer. First, are the parking rules understandable? Are they clear? And is there complete information to everybody, you know, all residents, whether they're renters or owners, right? And I think we know we can improve on that, on just making it very, very clear, whether, because it seems that new renters are not, you know, are not in the know like people who have been here and lived on where you can park, where you can. Do we have enough, the second question is, do we have enough unlimited, with no time restriction, parking spaces for the people who purchased these passes, owners and renters in the downtown historic? And I think you said we clearly have enough parking spaces, right? Enough unlimited ones. The last question I feel we need to answer is the distribution of the overnight parking without restrictions, is it fair and equitable? And understanding the original reasons why some of these, and I'm going to tell you why I bring this up, because now you're looking at the parking lot and you're explaining very logically why you selected these, but if you go, so the copper post is in everything behind them, all the spaces are, and that's where we have, how many units do you have, Doug? 11 units of renters that aren't, you know, these aren't big, condos. They have not, you know, they have the restrictions, right? Go back 2 slides and you go behind Surf Shop and Anna's, right? If you go.
Yeah, we're up there.
Back.
Yeah,
we are. Okay,
yep.
Right. Again, in front of that Surf Shop and we've got the Grand Theater condominiums that has 20 units, and they have one spot of their own parking, but then many of them have 2 cars. What do? Then you have the Zephyr, right? And you have individual condo units on top of that. So those parking spots that you have green they're never available or accessible to, you know, these people. So this is news to me that tip a few, they can't. But now, again, I think the young lady that was in here talking about tip a few behind the bar, that could be crowded all the time till, you know, when they come to get a parking spot, even though that's available, it might not be available. It's a very, you know, good parking spot to park in, you know, if you're going, you know, to do a little pub crawl downtown. So what I'm saying is I'm concerned that we might be taking some of the disadvantaged people, and I don't want to use the word discriminate, but we're not giving them sort of, is that really that third question, Jeremy, is the distribution of those restrictions? And so I guess 2 questions I have is asking you guys to look at the fairness of that distribution. He's only got 11 units there. Shouldn't he have a, you know, handful, one of those rows be over, you know, behind his, you know, that they would be able to park without restrictions? It's just a, you know, just a thought, look at that fairness of distribution. Anyway, it just, as I did look in detail at all of these, I just have some concerns about whether we, you know, again, we've got former mayors and other people that have lived on the street, but again, they're in the know and they know where these parking spots are. My concern is we are unintentionally, but we've created a situation where we're disadvantaging those renters in the Copper Post. Okay.
I agree with you, Karen, because if you look across the street, the Tip a Few lot, it's all open. And then you go just straight across, they have a disproportionate amount on there. And if you keep going to the other lots, that's what I was trying to say before, is there's not much there. So you're absolutely correct. We should, you know, distribute it out more. Because if those people are, you're right, if you've ever walked down there like I do, and you'll see, I know some of the personal cars that are down there are parked in those spots, that they are in the condos up.
Grand Theater.
Yes.
I know. I know this. I know this too. So anyway, I'm just asking the question that, you know, I think you're on to the whole communication and how do we better communicate and identify the areas where these people can park and pass that information on. But I also wonder if we've disadvantaged them on that end. And that's where, like I said, they've got 11 units there. I don't know the rest of the buildings, how many units for the rest of this block between 2nd and 3rd, but I think that would be that's the one with the most units and up above the storefronts that.
I think what
have some
you'll find
concerns.
about most of the other units on that block is they use the space behind their buildings for parking.
If you only have one unit, that's probably a possibility, but not one for,
Well, I
from
don't think
11.
they all have one unit, Karen. I think.
It'd be
most
interesting on
have
the units.
multiple- Well, they don't have 11.
Yeah.
Doug has the most, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
But to me, the rest of the question is, okay, I will agree that people who own places are more likely to be in the know, and I would say that mostly because they're there longer typically. But I don't agree that that tenants don't have a responsibility to understand and comply with where they're allowed to park. So to me, one of the questions we should answer is the reason I think that the DDA is recommending that the spots immediately behind the copper post stay as with a 3-hour time limit is because those are the spots from which most of the shoppers park and walk downtown. Not all the shoppers certainly, but it's the entree to downtown from Franklin. So whether you value that or not is a personal decision, but I
do, Your Honor. I just wanted to say that you've got 2 rows of parking in that same lot, but they're both on the far end. Why can't you move one row behind the parking?
That is Doug's argument.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm just saying about the distribution, have we, and I asked you to look at that because we just happened to be talking about not people who owned condos or buildings downtown, and we're talking about more of the long-term renters. These are people who are living here as residents or, working here. So anyway, I'm just posing the question about the fairness and equity of that distribution.
And that's a very understandable and good question. Like when we're on the Copper Post lot, we'll actually go back to the surf shop. These spaces were designated prior to the theater's condos being completed. That's where those were placed. Most likely, and again, this was far before my time, but most likely because of the proximity to the Copper Post as well, so they would have some use of those spaces closer. The argument of, are they put in the right spot? The question is going to be, will people then just migrate their parking habits? If we move the green from the right all the way to the left behind Doug's space, are those parking spaces still taken up by residents in that block, and Doug's residents still don't have a space because they're not coming in at, quote, the right time, or they're coming in at a different time of day when those parking spaces may be used? Adding more parking spaces to the unlimited time doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense for the retailers, for the restaurants, because you're going to take more parking away from being transient and being open more consistently.
I'm not saying
I
add,
know that.
I'm saying redistribute the ones that are unlimited in that parking lot here. You've got some orange ones and green ones.
Yeah.
You've got 2 strips of green. Take one strip, swap it with the orange one on the end. You've not changed, I mean, they look relatively the same. Maybe there's a difference but we're talking about a parking space or two within that lot. And then what you're already doing is trying to communicate and do a better job of explaining the parking rules and sort of these special little islands within the parking that don't have those restrictions. Mm-hmm. We need to do that better for our renters who aren't the long-term owners that know all the rules and ins and outs, so that we don't disadvantage them. That's really that's really what I'm asking you guys to take a look at.
Yeah, we can certainly discuss that again, but the reason they felt it comfortable in the spaces it was, is just moving the unlimited parking spaces didn't necessarily solve any problem. It just may migrate where people do park long-term versus actually creating a solution to Doug's issue where his residents may not have somebody to be, or may not have room to park behind their building. If we moved one of those rows of green, that doesn't necessarily mean only Doug's tenants can park there. It means anybody can park in those spots. So do we still have that problem? Do we
But
still
they have a
that
chance.
issue?
But they have a chance with the Walmart, and it's something close and convenient to their, if they're bringing up groceries, moving things in.
Yep, we
That's
can
my
certainly.
my only point is, I would like to make sure that we're not disadvantaging those folks.
We can definitely talk about that again as well. Moving up groceries, I think that public safety would stand behind me saying if somebody's got groceries and they need to carry them upstairs, they could easily park on the curb for a few minutes with their emergencies on, take their groceries up, and then repark their car. That wouldn't be a concern I would have for any of the residents, whether it's in his building or any other building. The unloading and loading is a pretty common issue in most larger communities, so that type of use would be acceptable for a very short period. You can't obviously go unload your TV and then go install it on a wall and be gone for a few hours, but if you were to be unloading groceries and need to park your car for 10 minutes, that should be totally acceptable to have your emergencies on in that case too.
I mean, the only way to really solve the problem is what Ashley had originally come up with, is to designate one lot someplace in the downtown strictly for long-term parkers. And that's the only way you're really gonna solve the problem, so that they know they have a parking space, that the only people that can park there are people that have a permit, a long-term permit. I mean, that's the only way you really, I think you're gonna solve this, because I agree with you. You can move these colors any place you want to. You can't guarantee anybody parking.
Well,
I agree
and
with you.
honestly, Kevin, you could require a permit of, let's say, the third in Franklin lot, which was the one Ashley was looking at, and any resident, Doug's residents or any resident, would be glad to know they have a backup plan at 3 blocks from their house or 4 blocks from their house. But if they find a closer parking place, they'll use it, and
Right.
then we're doubling up on one car's using 2 parking
That's
spaces.
true.
And I sure don't, I don't like that idea at all.
I guess
I got one other thing I'd like to say, Karen, which
Oh,
is, from an enforcement standpoint, it makes more sense to have the limited in one spot and the unlimited in another spot. I think it's clearer to people.
Well, that's
who
just
use
this
it.
parking, that's,
150 feet.
no, that's,
That's really what we're talking
Half a
about. It's a
block.
downtown resident.
let me just interject here, though. That's just this, we have it split out in other areas, some of the other parking lots, it's kind of, so I don't know if that's a complete argument. But I disagree with you based on the point you made earlier, Mr. McLaughlin.
Mrs. Law.
Because you said, if they can park overnight, which means from what time to what time?
Essentially from noon, technically, but from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. is the 3-hour parking, and then 5 a.m. to 9, or 5 p.m.
So
to
5
9
p.m.
a.m.
to 5 p.m. to
9 a.m.
to 9 a.m. And then from 9 a.m., you said,
9 a.m. to 5 p.m. is the 3-hour limit from May 1st through November 1st.
yeah, 8 to 6, right, yeah, I know, I went and took pictures of the signs. But whether it's 8 or 9, you said then they'd get their 2-hour, if they were in the unlimited. So we're really talking about giving them a lot more leeway so they don't have to move their car at 8 a.m. or whenever the timing is on the overnight parking. So that really does make a difference, whether it's restricted or unrestricted. And that's I don't think people are asking for a dedicated parking space. If they are, that's a different, you're right, that's the problem they're solving. What they're asking is that they have this reasonable amount of time that they can, park their car, not have to get up at 6, they have overnight parking, not get up at 8 o'clock and have to rotate their car every, 3 hours. You give them just that 3-hour limit on top of that till 11 or noon, that's a pretty good, and having that, again, behind, I know, I mentioned groceries, I wasn't trying to solve a specific thing, but it's just basically behind their parking lot. We've got 11 units of renters on that corner.
But this is a public parking lot, Karen.
It is, they're having a public parking, but we've got them all down here.
So
It's
from my
accommodate.
perspective, no downtown resident in the world expects to park at public expense immediately behind their house.
There's no, you've just said that there's a good chance that someone else will be in there, but at least they have a shot at that. That's all I want is a shot.
50 feet away.
Well, that's not right behind them. That's not right behind them.
Oh, my gosh. They're in downtown.
It is open to the public if they don't get it.
I think we all agree, I think we all understand where we are. I think we just don't agree on the solution. And it sounds like Mike and Karen support shifting it over.
I don't understand why we're so tied to it having to be there or in another place when, no one's told me why. Was that because many years ago, someone was mayor or a council member or they, and that was right behind their place? I don't know these, these questions.
Jeremy's articulated two reasons that I heard. One is that they tried to put the unlimited spots closer to the middle of the blocks. And the other was that they wanted the limited spots to be closer to the shopping and restaurants. So I think that's so that if you are a resident in that whole block and you're looking for an unlimited parking spot, putting them in the middle of the block gives people to the, I guess it would be the
East and west.
East and west.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kind of. It's on
I'm
a weird
directionally
angle.
challenged on occasion, but yes, roughly east and west, it would give them equal access. So there are people who live above Buffalo Bob's. There are people who live above, Fortino's, I think, is now short-term rentals with their own
Yeah,
spaces.
Patricia's has people
Patricia's
living
has
above
people above, yeah. So there are other residents that also use these spots. And Doug has the largest number, but Doug also is at a corner that has the most foot traffic through it to get to the shops and restaurants. So, say it again, Doug.
Go back a slide.
Go back a slide.
Two.
There you go, right
Yeah.
there. Those are not in the middle of the block.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, why would you do it? You split it there. It just seems like I'm just saying, it
Right.
It
Yeah, I
seems like
understand what
the
you're saying.
rhyme and reason, I went through every single individual, and I tried to, even understand. I just don't think that is an unreasonable request to dedicate some spots. Now, it doesn't mean, you're right, Your Honor, anybody could park there, but just so they don't if they are lucky enough to get it right there, they don't have to get up at 8 o'clock and move their, yeah, we're going to tie
Okay.
some other things. I'm not asking for a dedicated parking spot, for these guys. They're not asking for it either, by the way. It's
Okay,
just a little
I'm gonna-
consideration
I'm
for.
gonna
Make a
suggest.
suggestion here?
Yes, Mike, go ahead.
I'll make a suggestion. By any chance, to all these people down there that are renting it, have they actually seen this map and know exactly where it's all at? It might be a good suggestion that you pass it out to them all so they know exactly where the spots are.
I think,
Sometime-
Mike, they know where they are, they just
I don't know, I'm just
like it.
asking that question.
No.
I mean, that's what-
Are they handed out to, a renter comes in,
Well,
do they hand this
I'm gonna,
out to them?
I'm gonna make another point as a landlord in town, all right? Landlords have some responsibility to communicate to their tenants what the local parking arrangements are. So, Doug, have you told people where they're allowed to park and where they're not allowed to park?
I give them a copy of the map and tell them they have to go down to the hall and permit where they're gonna get ticketed for overnight parking. And I show them where they can park.
So it's really,
Question, they said, well, that's really stupid.
right, it's really not a question of they don't understand where they're allowed to park. It's really a question of they don't like where they're allowed to park. That's what it comes down to. And I understand, Karen, you're right. You could make them happy by shifting some. And so the question is whether, I don't even know that we have an issue on it doesn't sound like we have consensus that we should, but it doesn't sound like we necessarily have consensus that we shouldn't. So,
I
go
haven't
ahead,
said a thing
Ryan?
yet.
Yep.
What
do you
maybe
think?
I'll put this to, hopefully we put this to rest. I think we've beat this up enough tonight. I mean, I was surprised to hear there's 304 overnight unlimited spots within 3 blocks that anybody can, of those folks that have overnight permits can use. So, at unlimited time, they don't have to move their car the next day. So within 3 blocks, I mean, if we're here, I mean, we spent, sounds like a significant amount of staff time and DDA time and our time tonight. Looking at this again, we're talking about a 3-block area here. There's plenty of spots. We saw how many permits there are. I don't see a need to move anything at this point. I don't know what moving something, from one side of a block to another side of the block, if that's really going to solve the issue at this point. I think there's plenty of spots close by. I don't see a need to make any changes at this point.
Okay, I don't think I mean, it's not a matter, it's a presentation, so we don't have a resolution to pass,
right.
But I think that.
You can if you want, but yeah,
Yes, but I
there's
think
nothing
what
on
you've
your
got
agenda.
is- I think what you've got is a split decision, but the majority thinks what you've recommended makes sense and would carry it out.
But you've got some feedback from
Yes.
the dissenting.
Feedback's always important, whether it's for or against, because that's how you move forward. You take that information and hopefully, Doug will sit down with us again and we'll talk through, again, all the time. You can.
Nobody has ever come to me and asked me a single question or asked me what I thought, not once.
You were at R&R and we discussed this.
I just want to, just one last, and thank you for that. I respect, my fellow councilman's point of view, even if I disagree with it. I would ask, though, we say as a community that we talk about affordable housing, and we talk about trying to make, these are rentable apartments. These are not high rent, high cost condos. These are things for the very people that we say we're trying to help find housing. And we're quibbling about not changing the number of parking spaces, of moving a strip to make it a little more convenient for those people. We're resisting that. And I would just ask you and the committee looking at this to search your hearts and say, is that really what is that really something? Can we not talk to these people and talk to Doug and find out, would that at least make it more convenient? It's clear we have to have better communication. I walked almost all those parking lots. I took pictures of the signs. I was confused. It was not clear where I could park. Now, I didn't have the handy dandy map, but I saw a lot of things. I'm like, so this row I can, but not this row. It wasn't clear. It wasn't clear. So I think you're on your way to kind of getting better communication about the materials, making it clearer for everyone. But I would just, ask you to also consider whether or not we're doing the right thing for all members of our community.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, moving on to new business, item A. Would the clerk please read it for us?
Consideration by City Council of a resolution to formally rename the Grand Haven Community Center as Central Park Place with the tagline of Arts, Events, Community. The Community Center Board recommends approval, administration recommends approval.
So move.
I got a motion by McLaughlin. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Lowe. Ashley, are you putting up a presentation, or do you just want us to move forward on this? Because I think we might be ready to just move forward.
You can move forward.
Okay.
think it's
Anybody got discussion? I think I like the name. I like the logo, and I like the tagline. So, anybody got anything else they want to say about that?
No, I'm good.
Would you please call the roll?
Are we playing Monopoly?
Are we playing Monopoly? Park
Yeah.
Place? Because it's Park Place?
But this is Central Park Place.
Central Park Place. I liked it. I thought it was clever. And I salute you. Please call the roll, Maria.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes, and Mazel Tov, and I wish the community center great things. Okay, item B.
Consideration by City Council of an introductory resolution to amend Section 40-201.19 of the zoning ordinance, amending the definition of self-service storage facility.
Brian, are you out there? I'm here. Okay. I think we've all
I'll make a motion
read a motion to that effect.
so we can discuss.
Is there support for it?
Yeah, second so we can discuss.
Second, so we can discuss. Okay. What do you know, Brian? What should we know about this?
Good evening. Good to see everyone.
State your name and your position, please.
Okay. Brian Urquhart, City Planner. I think I've met all of you, maybe not Karen, but good to see you. It's been a fun 4 months since I've started here. This request is from Denny Dreyer of Dreyer Architecture, submitted a zoning change application to amend the definition of self-service storage facility. So a zoning change definition goes through a process to have a public hearing at the Planning Commission and then ultimately a review for final consideration by City Council. So it's a pretty technical, straightforward request. Is the current definition of self-service storage facility is a structure containing a separate individual and private storage spaces of varying sizes leased or rented on individual leases for varying periods of time. The text amendment is shown in your packet that includes a varying additional language. It says a structure containing less than 500 square feet of separate individual private storage spaces of varying sizes without conditioned space or toilet or bath facilities, leased or rented on individual leases for varying periods of time. So what kind of prompted this was 1815 Verhooks was approved by the Planning Commission as a warehouse facility in the TI Transitional Industrial District back in 2021 through case 2145.
Is that what it's technically called, Brian, is a warehouse facility?
That's what it was approved as.
Okay.
There was a condition attached to that approval. The warehouse units must be owner-occupied and not leased, so the project cannot be classified as a self-service storage unit. So, in conversations that we've had during the time that my predecessor left and then I came on board, is that Mr. Dreyer said that since the approval, the project has changed as long as with staff, and that some of the owners of the warehouse units would like to lease out their spaces. So these units were approved as 1,000 square feet and included space for toilet and bath facilities. And amending the definition would allow for these units to comply with the definition of a warehouse facility and not be considered self-service storage units. So you're amending a definition that wouldn't go against what was the condition of approval. So you're changing the definition of self-storage facility, while this would remain a warehouse facility.
Is a warehouse facility allowed in the transitional industrial zone?
Special land use?
As a special land use, Denny?
It's allowed by right.
It's allowed by right?
I believe it's allowed by right. A self-service storage facility is permitted by right only in the industrial district. So, let me just get back to the notes.
Right, well, yeah, I'm confused about how it started. And I know, Brian, you probably weren't there, but this was made a condition of these units. I mean, honestly, they look like warehouses more than they look like storage facilities, self-storage facilities, I would say. Though I guess you could have like a boat condominium that would be somewhat equivalent to this. So why did it develop the way it did? Do you know?
I would probably refer to Denny Dreyer on that.
Can you tell us what happened, Denny? I'm not sure.
I'll let Denny kind of go. I just wanted to finish one thing, is that the Planning Commission did vote unanimously to deny it, and staff also recommended, because there's standards of conditions, to review for a text amendment did not feel it met those standards. So just wanted to
Okay,
add that there.
so, hang on one second. They voted to deny it, and, okay, actually, let's
Oh.
see, Denny, how did this develop the way it developed?
At the time we were developing these, we figured they would all be owner-occupied, so it wasn't a problem with having them rented. We have had 2 people buy them knowing they're going to need that space in 2 years. And now they'd like to rent it until they really need it. And 2 of them are looking for RVs, and they're like 2 years away. If you've tried to buy an RV lately, they're out there a ways. So they would like to be able to rent these units. Basically, what you're saying in the TI district is you can't rent a space in the TI district because then it's self-service storage.
If it's warehouse space.
If
Doesn't
you
matter.
rent it out and it's storage,
Yeah.
it is a self-service storage space. My intent was to try and redefine what a self-service storage unit is. We have lots of these little 10 square foot to 20 square foot to however big, and that's not what the city wants in TI district, and I understand that. But, I mean, our units are 1,000 square feet. We're basically 24 by 44 and 46.
They really are like mini warehouses, connected.
Well, and people are using them for, Randy Smith is going to be doing his printing there.
Yep.
Mike is going to be doing his artwork there. I'm going to be storing my boat there. Okay, so it's really a storage unit for me. Will I be doing any work there? I'll make some sawdust if I ever really do retire. But, so the intent was just to try and clarify self-service storage units that you know, and there was nothing magic about the 500 square foot that I put in that notice. It could be 1,000 for all I care. But I really didn't understand Planning Commission's rejection of changing it, because nothing in TI can now be rented for storage because that's now a self-service storage unit. The biggest problem I had with the Planning Commission meeting that night is they passed C.J. Wilson's, and he's got 3 units for rent in there, for storage. Well, if I can't rent, why can he? So if we look at changing it so that 500 square foot, 600 square foot, 700 square foot, whatever you want to make it, is fine with us. But so that they can be rented out and they aren't self-service storage units. Because at this point in time then, C.J. Wilson can't rent his out either, because they're self-service storage units by definition. So if we change the definition of self-service storage units to these smaller units, CJ wins, we win. We're looking at no more than 3 of the 15 units that would request being able to rent them out. So that's about 20%. So we're still meeting a vast majority of the requirement of being owner occupied.
Why did?
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry, no, go ahead, Kevin.
Are these all sold?
Yes.
So we basically, what you're saying is you've got 3 owners that want to lease out their space because they haven't bought their RVs yet.
Right.
Okay.
But the other thing that happens is if this definition of self-service storage unit holds, I'm sorry, CJ can't rent his spaces because those are now self-service storage units.
I don't know CJ's spaces.
I don't know
Explain
CJ's
to me what
spaces.
they
It
are.
was approved the same night that I was rejected, basically.
And it's, where's the property located?
725 Park.
I went by there the other day. Yeah.
And I did not understand why I was rejected, and it was right there on his plan, lease units, 3 leasable units. So, if
Brian, can you clarify this for us? Because I'm totally confused.
So CJ Wilson's project was at 745 Park, was approved as a contractor's yard with leasable spaces. That's a special land use. That's the difference.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just reading through sort of the notes from the planning commission. I think you all have too, but, they were viewing this, not as a storage condominium, but the main concern was that the original approval required the warehouse units to be owner occupied.
Okay,
I'm
I'm just gonna give, just for what it's worth, some background that I have on the property, which was that this was a piece of property with some significant environmental issues that these guys cleaned up to develop something that I think is constructive for our town, and has value in a variety of ways, and is entirely suitable for the place that it's located. So I'm not, I don't like the idea of overruling the planning commission, frankly. But I guess the question is there a way to do this? It's apparently not uncommon for Denny to come and bring us an ordinance change to bring us something that would make sense of the options of building. So, and I think this is one way to do it. I guess another way to do it would be to change the ordinance to allow self-storage in the TI district, which I don't think anybody wants. So, I think we are going to need to vote.
I just have a question, and maybe Danny, you can explain it. It said the reasons that the Planning Commission, maybe you can expand on this, the reasons they recommended denial, and it was a unanimous vote of the Planning Commission, all ayes. The proposed amendment does not comply with the condition of approval for this case. And the second thing is the proposed amendment does not meet all the standards for approval per section 40-121B. Is there anything that you can help us with to understand why those two?
I don't even know what those are.
Neither do I, so that's why if that's their reason
Brian,
for
do you know?
approval or disapproval, I don't want to.
So I can answer that the best I can. Is that oftentimes if you have a zoning change, easier example would be if you had a rezoning. You're changing it, what does the rezoning go to? You look at the future land use, does it have support for water, sewer, things like that. With a text amendment, there's listing of 5 conditions of approval. And one of those is that would it clarify the intent of the ordinance or correct an error? This was a request upon an applicant to have kind of a change of a site plan, and that believes that didn't meet that standard. It wasn't an error or that was included. A change in case law or state legislation is the next standard. There was no recent case law or no standard and legislation that was met. Some of those other standards do not apply. And then there's one that says, is the proposed amendment consistent with the city's ability to provide adequate public facilities, services consistent with the city's public health, safety, and welfare to the community. And, with this, it's largely kind of the same. So there's a couple of main reasons why.
Sorry, say that again. With this, it's what?
It's the same type of use that's being put in there. It's just amending the definition. He's not changing the property. It's just kind of an ownership. So some of the standards are met, but usually you have to meet all 5 of those standards. So it is a little confusing for this. The challenge of having a text amendment that it applies to that definition rather than just that property. We don't allow use variances, and that's why it didn't go through zoning board of appeals.
Right.
Whereas you could have appealed a site plan through that process versus a zoning text amendment, and that's the process that Mr. Dreyer allowed.
Well,
So that was included in the minutes, was that didn't meet all of those standards because there was no error.
And it has to meet all of them?
Largely, yes. Yes, if they apply. So, but that's the planning commission's review. City council, you obviously can.
Okay, so in the rest of the world, if you were defining self-storage unit, would you define it the way we define it, or would it exclude places that have toilets that have, I assume conditioned means like heated and air conditioned? Yep, okay. 'Cause most most storage units do not have those things, and these are legitimate ways perhaps to
Correct.
distinguish them.
I would say that's true. I would say,
Yeah.
the way it's
Because,
defined.
I mean, really, what he's built is a sort of a condominiumed warehouse facility that fits the zone it's in. But the question to me would be, if we did support a zoning ordinance change, would it allow things into that zone or other zones that allow would allow things into that zone or other zones that are incompatible with our land use plan?
I think it's not going to affect the TI district that much. I think it's only the industrial that would have an impact because we're amending the definition of self-service storage
But
facility.
in industrial, self-storage is allowed as a matter of right.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
So if they built something that was bigger, had air conditioning and heating and had a bathroom, it would probably still be allowed, right, in the industrial district, so,
It can be storage.
Yes.
Yes.
In the TI district.
yes.
Probably where I made my mistake was when Jennifer told me it will be owner occupied, correct? I said yes.
Yeah, and so they made it a condition of
Made it a
your
condition.
permit, yeah.
Not thinking that that could have some.
And the plan was to owner occupy, and it is largely owner occupied.
Largely owner
Okay.
occupied.
I think I get it. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think, yep.
Could he go back to the planning commission and request amendment of a special land use approval? Take out that condition?
That is possible, I believe.
Did
But-
you
but
understand the
my-
question,
my
Denny? Yep.
My concern is still with CJ's. So if CJ can have rental for construction, storage units, then I should be able to have that. Two of the three people that want to rent would rent it to a contractor.
Mhm.
But I can't do that because I have to be owner occupied. Why is that
Right,
different
well,
for me?
what Ryan's asked is,
Remove
could he
that
go back
condition.
to the planning commission, rather than us overruling the planning commission, could we send it back to the planning commission and you request they remove that as a condition of your use?
And to be truthful, I would rather see you do that than to overrule the planning
It's
commission.
kind of, yeah, I think that's kind of, guys.
I would
right
agree.
there.
So
Yep.
it seems like the planning commission is seeing this as a way to get around their special land use approval and conditions. And you have a right, I think, I would assume, to go back and request,
And to be
sort of
truthful,
change
I
your
would
special
rather
land use.
have you send it back
Based
to
on new
planning
information, you
commission.
have new information.
Don't overrule them, because
Right.
if I were on the planning commission, I'd be very upset.
Right.
And we don't want that, because they work really hard and they're trying to do the right thing, so.
And it's not that easy to get people to be on the planning and the zoning board, so let's not overrule.
Okay.
Okay.
So that seems to be the root cause of the problem. Right.
So I think right, I think that would require a motion to, let's see.
Return it to the
Send-
planning commission?
Yes.
Send this back. Right. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know that we can just send it back and tell them to reconsider their special land use process. I think he would have to apply and based on new
Remove-
information
Okay,
that
so-
he's,
We can move to postpone action on this resolution to give Denny time to take it back to the planning commission with a request for.
To remove the
for-
condition.
Yes.
With our
and-
recommendation for him to take it back, if we put that in as a recommendation that we tell him to go back, it makes it a little bit more stronger for the planning commission to look at if we have ours saying
I think the
is our
planning commission will
recommendation.
look at it, and I think they'll give it, Brian will explain what the questions we were asking and our desire, as I'm sure they do, to have consistent uses within the same zone, so, it's just a question at this level. So Mike, you would think we should send it back with a recommendation, they look at it again?
Yes.
With the possibility of amending the conditions
Yes.
or removing the condition of, yeah. All right,
I think if you use the word recommendation from us, it would help out a lot.
I think it would.
You know, instead of us overturning it, I don't want to overturn it also, but I would like to make a recommendation to the planning commission.
All right, the former planning commission people sitting here, give us your best guidance.
One thing I haven't read the definition of a warehouse facility.
Could we just
The
do a
warehouse facility state that it has to be owner occupied?
It does not.
Okay, as long as that's not, so why would they place that condition on there? I'm just trying to.
He just said, because
I
he
think-
asked
I
Jen.
think he's exactly right.
It-
Jennifer said, are these gonna be owner occupied? Denny said, yes, they are, and
So-
so they made it a condition. But I don't know
That's
that there was
odd.
necessarily an intent to make
Necessary,
it a
yeah.
condition. Yeah, at the beginning. I mean, it,
No, there was a reason for her madness.
okay,
And that was because if it's rented out, it is a self-service storage unit.
mm-hmm.
So therefore.
Yes, that makes sense, right.
it
This
made
will only
sense
make,
to us.
yes.
We just didn't realize it was gonna have an effect on us.
Well,
And
then,
it's
what you're
not.
saying is they can't really remove the condition. Because it,
Well, but
then
then
it
how
becomes,
can Brian, how can CJ Wilson get it?
well, Ryan's explained that, and and they've distinguished it. And
Okay, so I can rent it out to contractors then?
I don't think that's what Brian said. They've got a special land use permit of a different type.
Correct.
And the type that they have allows him to rent out space. I wouldn't, go ahead.
Get a special land use for contractors' facilities, because that's a permitted use.
Well, be happy to discuss that after this
Yeah,
meeting,
mixed
but.
uses and-
Okay,
But the question before you is the text amendment, but you can, not take action, but say, hey, let's revisit the case that prompted this planning commission to review it based on the new evidence that Denny has provided, that there are differing circumstances for how many units that need to be rented?
Probably 3.
3 out of
15.
So,
Okay.
again, that's a learning process for me too, so.
okay, yeah, and that's fine. And it's a good thing, I think, to have this discussion. So I think at our level, maybe we don't want to send it, Mike, with a recommendation. I think I want Brian, I'd like to say, if you guys agree, that Brian should take it back with Denny and readdress it with the planning commission with these in more detail. And if, in the end, it might be they're right, and they don't have authority to reframe it in any other way, and it will require but if it came up to us and said, yes, we recommend that, because we see the consistency in land use within the zone, then I think we'd feel a lot better about addressing it that way.
Yeah.
Is that accurate, guys?
Yeah, I still see why renting it, leasing it makes it all of a sudden a self-storage. I'm not following, but.
It's because of the definition of self-storage, and that's why Denny cleverly, I think,
But if-
said, let's, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I see what he's saying with going that direction, but a warehouse is a building used primarily for the storage of goods and materials. And
So you would say it could also have been permitted as a warehouse, Ryan?
well, the special land use is for a
For this one was for a warehouse.
warehouse.
Yeah.
So if he met the definition and he met the special land use,
They just threw in a
It's
condition
odd
of
condition,
approval.
but-
That's why I
Okay,
want to look
I
at it.
guess I see what you're saying. If they gave him a special land use permit for a warehouse, and you are allowed to rent warehouse space, if they removed that condition, which sounds like, did you approach them with removing the condition and they said no?
No.
But you
Okay.
you took the route of text amendment. so,
Okay,
yeah.
I got it.
fine.
So, right, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. So,
Make a motion to postpone. What's that?
we're gonna make a motion to postpone here and ask you guys to take it back and see if it can be worked out at the planning commission level.
That's reasonable approach.
Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay, everybody
you.
good with that?
Yes.
Is
You have
there,
a
okay, so we
motion, a
need to,
second,
right,
so we
we got a motion from Kevin?
Yes.
Is there
Second.
support? Second from Lowe to postpone action until this issue has been revisited at the planning commission level.
Sorry, it was Kevin and,
Kevin and Karen.
okay.
Okay, anything else we need to know? You bet.
Probably
Thank you-
put that in
thank
the
you
next
both.
amendment.
Pardon?
Probably the next meeting.
Oh,
with
the next one is yours too?
No,
Oh,
the
no.
next meeting for the planning commission.
Oh, yeah, that'll be fine.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks, guys.
Get a motion in a second, should we vote on it?
I think we have to vote.
Yep,
yes.
we need to vote on it
We just wait for Maria. She's gonna
for
do it.
Maria to be ready. You ready?
Maria?
Mm-hmm. It's okay.
Didn't mean to put pressure on
McLaughlin,
you. Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. All right, item C, will you read it for us, Maria?
Consideration by City Council of a resolution to approve an administrative services agreement with Loudoun District Library for Human Resources and Financial Services with a term ending June 30th, 2025, and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary agreements. Loudoun District Library Board of Trustees recommends approval. Administration recommends approval.
Okay, is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there support?
Second.
Motion by Fritz, second by McLaughlin. Any discussion?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
I had pointed something out, and I'm not sure if she's going to address it, but
I think she's removed it. I saw the same thing. And
Labor
yeah, the
attorney
labor
service-
attorney services will be removed from the,
Yes, I did
Yeah.
discuss that with John, and he stated they had no issue removing that.
okay. Then if
Yeah.
that's removed, then I'm fine.
Yep. Anything else?
No.
Karen?
Go ahead, I have
No, no, I'm
quite a
good.
bit, okay. I just had a number of questions on this. So, this is for all of the finance and human resources. When you came up with the program costs and calculated what you were charging them, I'm just trying to look at what our own internal cost estimates to support this. It makes sense to do a percentage basis on sort of transactions and other kind of things. I'm just kind of a little bit concerned about whether or not we'll cover our fully loaded labor costs to support. And I say that, I just want to make sure that we've put some numbers together in terms of the actual fully loaded cost of supporting that, because we're charging on, besides the transition fee, we're going on an ongoing rate of 3.5% of their personnel costs. So we're doing it kind of like on a revenue, sort of running basis. So it's covering a big scope in terms of payroll, benefits, accounting, finance, HR, personal matters. I don't know if that's, if you guys have run all the numbers behind, or you've kind of looked at that. The HR and personnel matters seemed, fairly significant, especially as we get into recruitment and background, or other checks. I don't know if we do the background checks or if we're outsourcing that, and then there's a very real, cost transfer, So I guess I'm just asking you guys to make sure that you've looked at what it would cost, what it's currently costing us to support our own, and whether or not we are going to cover, fully cover our costs. I think this is actually a great thing to be focused on sharing services, because I think we can benefit greatly from that, but only if we're covering our costs. And I think we've learned in the past year that we weren't fully covering our pension and healthcare benefits completely, and so we want to make sure that we don't get into that.
Sure,
Okay.
and we did model this agreement off of a number of our other agreements that we have. We facilitate this type of services agreement for organizations similar to Central Dispatch, our wastewater treatment plant, MSDDA, and so forth. Really modeled it more similarly after our Central Dispatch contract as far as scope of services. And I think we found that 3.5% pretty reflectively covers our personnel costs going into this type of service agreement. I don't think, and Emily, our finance director, is present as well, I think we are quite comfortable with the figure and how that accurately covers our service costs.
Okay, as long as you guys have done that cost build-up, I'll trust that you've run those numbers. And then I would also, even if you've had other service, in terms of services, done it for different organizations, I'm not sure our library personnel are the highest cost personnel that you've ever done that for. So doing it on a 6.5% of personnel costs might be different than doing it for, say, DPS or some other. So anyway, it's just some things to consider. As long as you've run the numbers and you feel, as you've looked at that, we're good, then I'm okay. It's just seemed like a lot of services. And I guess my other question is, would you anticipate having to add staff to help, that would be funded by that in order to support it, or would you be absorbing that?
I'll have Emily speak to that.
Emily Green, Finance Director. Sorry.
Hi,
Emily
Emily.
Green, Finance Director. We will not need to add staff at this point.
Okay.
When John came to us, Ashley and I met with him, and like Ashley said, we provide those services to Ottawa County Central Dispatch. It is a very similar, you did say, the personnel costs are different, but it's a very similar setup to that and what we will be doing. And so I feel very confident that the staff that I currently have, I have great staff, and it's actually going to backfill something that we have room and time to do that.
Okay, so there's some economies of scale for you guys to do that, and you have the ability to take that on.
Correct.
Okay. Then
I
I'm
like your
good.
explanation until you said "at this point," but that's okay.
Well,
we can discontinue the contract if there's an out in the agreement. Thank you, Emily. Does
Thanks.
anybody have anything else?
Oh, okay.
Maria, would you please call the roll?
I apologize. We did not have a motion and a second for that.
I thought we did.
I made a motion.
Yeah. Fritz
I thought I
and McLaughlin.
No,
All right.
Ryan's good.
Oh, low,
Wait,
somebody did.
Ryan?
Fine.
I heard.
Yeah, I
this.
seconded it.
Okay.
Don't matter.
Motion by Fritz, second by Cummins.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's right.
Fritz,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes.
And thank you to Mr. Martin for his continued service and
Yeah,
retirement.
thank you very
here.
much,
Yes,
John.
thanks, John.
Yes,
And,
thanks for
and we
stepping
love
in.
Loudet Library, I'm just gonna say. Okay. Okay. Item D.
Consideration by City Council of a resolution to direct the city manager and city attorney to begin working on drafting an ethics ordinance. Administration recommends approval.
Can I get a motion to that effect?
So moved?
Is there support?
Support.
Discussion?
I think it's a great idea, and go ahead, Karen. I mean, you wrote this thing up.
Your Honor, would you like me to give a little overview? Would that be helpful?
Sure.
So,
Do we need discussion?
I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Okay.
Let's move on. If we need discussion, I'd say yes, but if we don't, I'd say, clerk, please call the roll.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah,
Good enough.
it was a very good explanation. Thank you, Karen.
Well, I'm glad to be
It's
brief.
in the memo.
Read the memo.
Lowe,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Okay, item E.
Consideration by City Council of a resolution to approve the employment contract with Ashley Latch as city manager and to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary documents. Administration recommends approval.
Can I get a motion to that effect?
So moved?
Is there support?
Second.
Motion by Fritz, second by McLaughlin. Do we need discussion?
No.
I have a small edit on there's a paragraph that talks about residency, and initially it was to require residency of the city manager, and then we got legal review and we're told you can't really require management of the city, of any municipal employee or public employee is actually what the state law says. So,
You can require within 20 miles of the border.
correct. Yes, but the paragraph ended up kind of weird because it started out as, we're going to do this, and then it said, well, we can't do that because of this. And you don't really need any of that in there, except if we want to require Ashley to live within 20 miles, we can put that in, and if we want to express a preference that she live in town, we can put that in. but I guess I'd like some latitude from you to say, I can work with Amanda to clean that paragraph up a little, because it's weird. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Other than that, that's all the discussion I had. Clerk, please call the roll.
Okay. So we're potentially altering that paragraph of her contract?
Yes, edits to that paragraph, but
Okay.
the contract will, the conditions will be as stated in that contract, or in the paragraph, but the language will be slightly altered. I don't,
Okay.
basically, we can leave it as it is, but it's a weird paragraph. I'm just gonna tell you, for a contract, we saw so many iterations of this thing as it
Yeah,
came
yeah,
across,
we did.
that we really didn't get a clean look at the final contract in any way until it came out in the, until it was published. And so I think we can still approve the contract with modification of that specific paragraph. But if you want to just approve the contract as it is, I can live with it.
That paragraph will say that actually has to live within 20
20
miles.
miles of the city.
So that's what it's gonna say,
Yes, correct.
right? That's
Yes,
all you're saying.
that's all, yes. But I'm gonna take out some of the stuff that says why we don't require her to live in, and it's
Fine.
it's
Okay.
kind of a weird paragraph to put in an employment contract. And I would like to clean it up, and if you give me authority to do that, I'll work with Amanda on it. And do you want to state a preference for her to live in the city, or do you just want to say we make a
This-
requirement that she live within 20 miles of the city of Grand Haven?
This just says that, it says that we may require her to live no more than 20 miles
Right.
from.
So the question is, do we want to require her to live within 20 miles? Which she does already, and I don't think she's going to move farther away.
If anything, she'll probably get closer, to be
That'd
honest
be
with
my
you.
guess
Right.
also.
Yeah,
Would hope so.
Right.
I think it's much ado about nothing, not a big
Contractor
deal, but
says, I think contract says within 20 miles.
So,
And I
so
think-
yes,
I
require
think
within
Ashley's
20
already
miles.
agreed to the 20 miles, so I'm pretty much set with
Yeah,
that.
okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
all right, good.
But yes,
Clerk, please call the roll.
Fritz,
yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes,
Lowe,
yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. And congratulations, Ashley,
Yes.
officially.
Yeah.
All right, I think we have one more, right, Kevin?
Yep.
It's new item F. Maria, would you read it for us?
Consideration by City Council of a resolution to approve a marina transient rates at level E for Sunday through Thursday, level G for Saturday and Sunday, and rate 1 for seasonal slips.
Can I get a motion to that effect?
So moved?
And is there support?
Second?
Okay, can we discuss, Kevin?
yeah, I mean, my only question is, Ashley, when we were interviewing you for your position, you specifically said that one of your priorities from financial stability is the deficit elimination plan strategy for one of them was the marina. How does this work? That we're keeping the same rates, and you're gonna be faced with, how are you gonna eliminate the deficit? I just gotta understand that.
Sure, and I think, if I recall correctly, and Char can correct me if I'm wrong, is that a lot of the rates are at the highest end that we're allowed to facilitate. And I think a lot of that will be through slip makeup rather than just those weekday, midweek rates.
What's slip makeup? You mean you'll rent,
Transient versus seasonal, so
you'll
forth.
rent out more days? It's more.
I think
Slips will be better used. No?
Well, no, I think rather than adjusting the midweek rate specifically, which is I think the only one that could be adjusted at this point, when we're still looking to attract a full slate, in our marina. I think that's more of the challenge at this point, is getting that attendance midweek, rather than adjusting the rate for that right now, working on building that, and then playing with the transient versus seasonal mix of slips that we have.
But that has to be approved by DNR?
That's a separate process.
And I'm glad Kevin actually pulled this out, because I had a question, and it might be Char's or it might be yours, Ashley, but I think we fill on weekends, basically. And so the question to me is, if we were able to add $20 a night for each weekend night, it looks like there's 2,500 weekend nights. Sounded like a lot, but I think if you divvy it out, it might work, which would be $50,000. So I was trying to figure out, we're as high as we're allowed to go on weekends, Shark? Is there a way to ask the DNR to go higher? Because I think, honestly, it's like $40 to get a campsite at the state park, you know. And I kind of looked at that, and I think we're charging about $50 for a weekend night here, and we're providing a lot more services than, no offense, than the state park is. So, do we have options or no?
Yes, we do have options. In the packet, you were given a rate sheet, and the rate sheet is from A to J.
Yep.
That's how they do their calculations. We are considered a premium port.
Destination.
Yes. Our biggest challenge, as Ashley said, is our midweek rentals. We are not full on the midweek. And one of our other challenges, and maybe even Ashley's not aware of this, is we have several groups that come in on the weekends, and have for years. Since I took over this position, I kind of just took over what was happening. And they primarily are asking for weekends. So you might have a yacht club coming from a different community and ask for a specific hold for a weekend to come in here. And one thing that we can consider, I think, Kevin, in response to your concerns about the budget, is to not do those things on the weekend, because we are full. We can be full every weekend.
Bring
bring them midweek.
The yacht club from Milwaukee, in Wednesday and Thursday, or Monday and Tuesday.
And the DNR gives us complete autonomy in how we operate from that perspective. They even recommend never holding spots for groups to come in unless they're reserving the entire marina. They do that with the state harbors, because that was a question I asked.
Can we bump the weekend rates, though?
We can bump them all.
Because honestly, I would bump the weekend rates. They didn't seem unreasonable to me. I looked at a 30-foot boat was in the $50 range for a night, and honestly, the campground that they pull those big mobile homes or motor homes into out by Fricano's on the east end and the state park I feel like the people who are coming in that want to come to Grand Haven on a weekend are going to pay the extra money. And I know Jeremy has sat here and said, we'd like to get the transient, we'd like to make more money on the transient slips and bring those people into town to use our shops and restaurants. So what do you guys think?
I agree. I'm fine with the weekday rate staying at E, but I'd be fine with, I'm surprised the state didn't, with all the inflation, didn't raise the rates at all, at least across the board, right? They didn't have
It surprises me too. They've been the same rate for a number of years. And I think the one caveat I would say, for a lot of the boaters that do come in, they consider themselves the working force boating community. And so there is, I would say from those who do come, they're the people who are not maybe, parking out in front of their residence and then coming in. They're maybe trailering in, that type of thing. But I definitely think that we can, on the weekends, easily attract and grow the revenue there if we did raise the rates.
If I read I might have read that wrong, but it seemed like between the number of slips times the number of weekends, it was a pretty large number of nights, and if we bumped them up $20 a piece, it looked like a pretty big chunk of change, and it's one of the few places where I think it's unlikely anybody's going to balk at that. And I mean, they want to be in Grand Haven. If you stayed at a local hotel,
It costs more.
On that night, it'd be $400 a night. So to stay at a boat slip on the riverfront right downtown, we are, to me, a premium destination. I would capitalize on it. I'm a cheap person, but I would pay that to come to Grand Haven, absolutely. You know, so.
Some of the boats to park there, they'll
Well, right,
don't
yeah,
worry about
yeah,
30
that's
bucks
right.
or
I get
20
what you're
bucks.
saying, that there are some local boaters who like to come in.
$3,500
And,
worth
and
of
they
gas
may
in it.
choose, they may say, no, I'm not paying that. I doubt it. By the time you put gas in your boat, if you've got a place to come that's fun, I think they'll pay for it. So I'd be interested in looking at bumping, and I agree with the weekday rates. I'd like to, I think you can maybe sell it to the yacht clubs as, well, we can't reserve the club on the weekends, but during the week we could, and the rate's cheaper, you know? Not that I think they care about that much either, so.
Well, I don't think we can go, like, set a dollar amount higher. We can just go based on this chart, right? We can
Exactly,
only go
we have to
so we're
select.
at
Right,
G,
from the chart, yeah.
but
have
the
you got
chart
the
only
chart?
even if you went up to the highest on the chart for the 25-foot, it only gives you, well, I shouldn't say only, but it's $12.
Right, I was looking at 30-foot boat, because
Your
that's
30-foot
what I
boat
see down there,
goes from
30-foot
48
boats.
to 62.
Right, so $14.
And then as you get larger,
right,
then you're
larger
right,
boats,
Mayor.
yeah,
I mean, it does
yeah,
get up
bigger,
to.
yep. I would bump the weekend rates to the right.
Okay.
I
So
would
then that
max
would
them
be
out.
Right up to the
J.
top?
Yeah, I would,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it is a place, I've got a friend who works at the county parks, and they have a couple of marinas, and she says they're big money makers for them. So, I would like it to be a big money maker for us.
Great.
Is that okay, Shar? Is that,
I think we should go for it.
okay?
You know, Sean, and I'm sorry, this is my first year with this. What does DNR control when it comes to our rates? Why do they control it, and how long do they control it?
Sure. So we're, the how long, as long as we're wanting to accept money from them in order to do things at our marina, they'll have some of that control.
We use state money to rebuild the docks and stuff.
And since I've been here, we're in a delayed third phase remodelation of the marina, and it's simply at this point in time there is no additional revenue to do that third phase. And so, these baby steps, bringing in more rates, higher rates, bringing in more dollars will get us to that long-term goal of that third phase that's been delayed.
But they control them.
They do.
Is it easy for people to get reservations, Shar?
Well, I would say the marina is exactly like the campgrounds. People are, as soon as the 6-month day rolls around, they're up at midnight
They're
making
looking
their
for the
reservations.
What's our occupancy? I guess I would also say for the weekly rates, we're going to get the same, I don't think we're going to discourage anybody by bumping the weekly rates up either, the weekday rates.
Okay.
I mean, I would like to think we'd encourage people to come, but I think the same number of people will come, and if they pay $12 a night more, it benefits us. So I might say bump all the rates right and see how we do.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Fine with me, I agree.
Yeah,
Let's see what happens for a year.
Yeah.
We're gonna get to lose.
We can.
Right.
So would you recommend then taking the weekend rate that we currently have, G, and taking E up to G? So that's a kind of a two-step. So a smaller boat,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
25
Okay,
feet
so-
would go from $34 to $40, a $6 increase.
All right, so we're gonna take I didn't bring my chart, but I'm gonna look at Ryan's chart. So we're gonna take, I'm interested, right now, we're at
E.
We're at E for the weekdays.
Yep.
I like a 30-foot boat, $40, and E, I think they'd pay 53. I'd put them at H. But I wouldn't mind putting them at 62, frankly. I think, what do you guys think? No? Mike?
It cost them $10,000 to fill up their boat. What the heck?
Right.
It's $15.
Right, I don't think it's gonna make one whit of difference. What's the average stay?
I'm a boat owner, and
It won't make a difference, right?
I don't think so.
No, I don't either. Right. I'd bump them. What's the average stay? I mean, do they stay 3 days?
I would say it's usually 3 to 4 days until we
so
get
it's gonna
there.
cost them another $60. I would bump all of them all the way to the right. That's what I would do.
Yep. I'm good with that.
Try it.
It honestly doesn't even cover our costs at this point, so, Mike, it sounds like you
I'm
got
good
a
with
different-
at least going to H, you know, but I don't think it's gonna affect us if we go all the way.
Right,
I
that's,
don't have any
I
objections.
think we will end up with the same number of days, and if you can steer some of the clubs out to the weekdays, we won't save them any money, sorry,
Right.
but it'll bump up the
Occupancy
the
in midweek.
occupancy, which is gonna be huge.
Okay.
So do we have to make a motion to approve it based on the rates that we just talked about?
You'll want to make an amendment?
I'd like to
Yes.
make an amendment.
Okay.
To make the rates all at J.
So we're bumping
Uh,
everything to J.
Right.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that. Got to vote on the amendment?
Okay, rate one for seasonal slips, I might have missed that, okay, never mind, we got that. That's the top rate,
That's the
right?
top of it.
Yep, I'm good with that. Is there any more further discussion? Please call the roll, Maria.
So this is for the amendment to alter the fees to go, all of them to go to J. Oh, McLaughlin,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. And now we need to vote on that motion, right?
Yes, with the amendments.
And do we need a,
We have the previous motion and second, which was
but
Fritz and
we've amended
Cummins.
it, okay, good.
Fritz,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Okay.
Let's see.
Gotta get back to my page, sorry. All right, report by city council, who'd like to start?
I'll start. It was really nice. I went to the business recognition dinner and it was so nice to see some of our businesses in our community and what they contribute back to us and how hard they really work. It was pretty interesting. I seem to know most every one of them. They all come up to me and they all said that they own stock in my business. At one time or another, I think their kids that came to my business. But anyways, it was really nice to see them there and also see that they were recognized for all their hard work. It was very, very good. And also, I went to the Robinson Landing open house. It was so nice. I got to meet some of the residents that are living out there, and it was very interesting. It happened to be one of my old neighbors that I always kept asking about here in the city is, how can they kick these people out of their homes? They've been there for 3 years, and all of a sudden they came home and they had a notice on their door telling them they had to be out at the end of the month. Well, she says the best thing ever happened that she got moved out of there, and she ends up with a home out there now, and she is doing very well. That was one of my neighbors. She says, thank you for your hard work and everything else, and thank you to the city for donating the land and all this for all the hard work that we've done. So it was very interesting. It was very, very good to hear those kind of stories from all. I think I met 5 of the residents out there. They were all standing around talking to me. It was very good. One even says, yeah, I now only have to go 4 minutes to work. He says it was really good because he works right out there. And also, Chow Down in Centertown. I mean, what a phenomenal, I tell you what, it was packed from the time it opened to the time it closed. It was very good.
And
Well
the rain
attended.
held off.
Yeah, sun came out. If you stood in the sun, it was warm. If you're in the shade, it was a little cool. But it was very well turned out. And I'm glad we did block off the streets. It seemed to be very, very positive. And it was at the right time of year. You know, I mean, we have nothing really going on, and it seemed to bring a lot of people in town. So, other than that, that's all I have to say.
It was a busy Saturday.
Yeah, it was.
We had public safety recognition. That was very well attended. I happened to stop in and say hello. I did shout out just like Mike did, and went to Baker Lumber.
Art in the Yard.
Yeah, that was very well attended, and talked to a lot of people. So those are 3 great things that happened. We should be proud of all those 3 in the middle of October. That's for sure.
Brian?
I just want to congratulate Ashley on officially having a contract, and thank you, Ashley, and you, Maria, for the very nice little notes, thanking us for being your bosses, but
Cheesecake, too.
yeah, and the treats and that sort of thing. So thank you. That's very kind of you. So.
Karen?
Yes, I want to congratulate you as well, and welcome you back into your new role. So this is great. I also want to say to Shar, great job on the whole relaunching of the community. I can't say community center, Central Park Place. It was wonderful. I think, despite the weather kind of being yucky, it was all great. It was all wonderful. I guess, we didn't spend any time, and I also want to thank my fellow councilmen for unanimously passing this resolution to direct city staff to create an ethics ordinance. I just want to say a few words about that. When I was campaigning for office, that was one thing that I noticed wasn't in place, and at the time it was really all about just sort of the perception of City Hall being disjointed from what people wanted. And unfortunately, on some of our boards and commissions, and even a little bit on council itself, I know we've had just some issues with around having agreement on what those standards of conduct should be, and how all that should work. And so it was really wonderful to find, first of all, the Michigan Municipal League has a lot of resources for us in terms of standards to govern ethical conduct by our elected and appointed officials. So I just wanted to say a few words. An ethics ordinance speaks to the trust and accountability of local officials to the public. If public officials are unwilling to hold themselves to clear standards of ethical behavior, then how can our community trust us or hold us accountable? So we do have a lot of resources, and I think, while I firmly believe all of our commissioners, all of our BLP board members, and all of us here at council, we have the very best of intentions. Our understanding of and our individual standards, about those may vary greatly, and that's why making these sort of very explicit through policy, and that's what City Council does. It can help us, avoid some of the misunderstandings, unnecessary tensions, and ultimately not drain all of our city resources on some of this stuff. So I'm excited that this is something that all of us want here in terms of moving forward, so that we can lead, with transparency by example to support this. So ball's in your court, Ms. City Manager. That's all I have here.
I had a couple things. I was with Mike at Robinson Landing, and I agree with everything he said, and I also met several of the residents, and they are grateful for the homeownership opportunity, and they're already meeting and networking with their neighbors and forming neighborhood, which I think is kind of cool. Many of the homes are already occupied. Many sported Halloween decorations already, so it was kind of neat. Chow Down Centertown was excellent. Art in the Yard also. I went to the Chamber of Commerce luncheon, and I just want to announce publicly that the Grand Haven, it honored 5 local businesses, one from each of the Tri-Cities area communities, and our award winner was Tip of You Tavern and its Tip 2 operation. And I talked a little bit about how COVID challenged every business to evaluate and in some cases really change its operations, and that how restaurants and bars were particularly hard hit. But Tip was very creative, and I watched over a series of months while they modified their operations and basically created a kind of a cool outdoor venue for local people. I think Steve Vink understood that the patrons of the Tip a Few weren't gonna be really tolerant about him trying to change what went on inside the bar, so he moved outside the bar, and I actually think it's really cleaned up that corner and done some kind of cool things for the town. I wanted to let all of you know, there was a DDA meeting on Thursday, and I know that we are going as a council in the near future to consider street closures for next summer. And there is, to some extent, a disagreement in the merchant community about what to do about those. The DDA voted to recommend to us that, and I'm sure we'll see it at a future meeting, that we implement the same street closures next year as we did this last summer. But a local merchant came in with a petition signed by 42 local business owners in the first 3 blocks of Washington and some of the adjoining small streets, arguing that we have to embrace a new normal, and the new normal shouldn't include street closures, that they're arbitrary and unfair. So I think we're going to see that coming forward. We're going to see both a group of merchants, and 42 is a large number of merchants in 3 blocks, and the DDA, and they're not necessarily going to be on the same page, and we're going to have to figure that out. So I was just going to encourage each of you, if you have people you like to talk to kind of get the sense of what's going on, put your feelers out on that issue. And from my perspective, it's not just a downtown issue. It's a larger community issue because we're closing a public street. So I'm going to reach out also to some of the people in the outer rings, just neighbors and friends, and just see what people think about what we did this last year and how we want. We are really, I think, at the point where we're going to have to figure out what our new normal should be, and I just commend it to you as something you might want to think about and maybe seek some input from around town.
Mayor, is there any way we can get a copy
Of the petition?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got one today from John, I'll give it to Ashley, and
Can you
Ashley
send
can
it
get
out
out.
to us?
John Morgan put it together, yes, I would absolutely do that. And it's a large number of people in the first 3 blocks, so.
Yes, it is.
It worked for some people.
I
Pardon?
talked to quite a few of them,
Did
so,
you?
yes.
Yeah, did you walk through, Mike? Good.
I'm always walking downtown.
I know you are, yep. So I want you to know what's out there. I don't want to undermine the DDA, but I also, it was a split vote on the DDA, and I voted with the merchants, frankly, the people who came in with the. What was a little disturbing at the meeting to me was, there were statements made that, well, it's city council's job to decide. We think we should do this, but it's city council's job to decide whether to close streets, and so we're just going to let them do it. And a majority of council favors closure. So I was kind of like, well, that's news to me, because as a group, I believed we said, let's try it for a year and reevaluate. And I was hoping to get kind of some feedback in that regard. So I think we got some feedback, but it wasn't necessarily what we expected. And it's coming in a different form, but I think we'll see it coming forward. And then the last thing I wanted to say is Tribune Lofts groundbreaking ceremony is November 7th. So for people who are out there who might be wondering what's going on at the Tribune site, the building's gone, but they're having a ceremony on the 7th of November, and then I think that building's going to start going up. And it's going to be 39 apartments at the corner, basically, of Columbus and 3rd. And it'll bring more residents downtown. And I think that's all I got. Ashley?
Can I ask one other question? I'm sorry. Was there ever a meeting between you and the BLP?
Yes,
Did that ever happen?
yes, that did happen, and I would say it went well in terms of cordiality, but it didn't get us very far. So, and when I say that, I'm going to say that, Kevin, I have your email, and Ashley and I talked about it today, and I have a proposed response that I'd like you to consider, and we'll go forward from that.
Yeah,
Okay?
Yep, thank you.
Yep. Anything else? Ashley, you're up.
All right, so I would just like to bring your attention to next month, it being November already. As you're aware, we typically have a goal setting session that falls in the month of November that helps to inform our budget process. So I know you've been a little overburdened with special meetings and so forth in the last few months, but I wanted to gauge your interest in availability for a possible special meeting or in conjunction with your next meeting, whatever that may look like as far as a goal setting session. And also bring to your attention, this hasn't happened in a little while yet, but that second meeting in November does fall the week of Thanksgiving, so I wanted to at this point put that out there and gauge also whether you foresee an issue with that and how we might need to adjust based on your travel plans for the holiday.
Yeah, I didn't look that closely, but I have a conflict in terms of getting to my Thanksgiving location that week. So if there's any way that we could move that second, it's occurring the Monday of Thanksgiving week, which.
That's fine.
I'm good either way. I think, is anybody else out
Not
that
putting
week?
anything on the agenda, we can just cancel it.
It's usually a light agenda, so that's a possibility.
Are we allowed to do that? 'Cause
We
I
meet,
think we
though, we only have to have one meeting a month, and we meet that requirement with the November 7th meeting.
You sure we're only required to have one meeting a month? I could have sworn, I'm not sure, but
If that's the case, then maybe we could use the following Monday for your goal setting, and then that would still leave the Thanksgiving week free. I mean,
what's the following Monday, Karen?
The 7th is our
Regular meeting.
regular meeting, and then, I don't know, is that
14th?
14th?
Yeah, I can't, I'll be out of the country that week.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
We've got audit review committee that day, but it would end before 7 o'clock, so I could do it if.
But
we need
you're
to.
out.
Yep.
When are you out, Ryan?
Yeah, the 9th through the 20th.
The meeting and just have a light
To the
agenda.
20th.
Regular meeting, light agenda?
Okay. And then I'm gone, right?
Meetings,
Okay.
Stuff like that, we just maintain.
Regular meeting, light agenda.
Yeah.
Yes,
just
Kevin, yes? Regular meeting, light agenda?
The bills and stuff.
What is that?
We're gonna do the regular meeting on the 21st with a light agenda.
Okay, so I
Right,
won't
just-
be here.
Yeah.
Then, okay.
We'll have a quorum. Is that all right with everybody? Okay.
That's fine with me.
Okay. We didn't gauge goal setting. What do you want from us, Ashley? What kind of,
Yeah.
how about we put that on the November 21st meeting to just generally discuss as a group? And,
I won't be there, but you can get back to me on dates.
right. Is that all right?
That's okay.
Yeah. I think that we can discuss the forms we might want to take it in, and we've got some historic work we did last year that we could resurrect. And I guess I want to know the sentiment about that.
Okay.
And I think that's good. Okay. Anything else? Meeting's adjourned.
Second public comment.
Second call to the audience. Sorry. Thank you. At this time, members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time. Those not physically present who would like to may call in at 616-935-3285. If it continues ringing, please remain on the line until your turn. We will take all callers. Doug.
Thank you. Doug Vance, 100 Washington. I'd like to add my congratulations to Ashley. I just can't help myself but to say if you guys would have listened to me 3 months ago, you could have saved yourself $14,000 in a lot of time. But I'm a lot older. I've interviewed more people, had more experience of that in my lifetime, maybe than you all did. But I'd like to just talk about and I'm sorry that Jeremy left. I'd like to apologize to him for raising my voice, but the reality is nobody has talked to me or any of my tenants, to my knowledge, about the parking situation. And for those of you that think that there's plenty of parking down there, you're absolutely right, there's plenty of parking. And something I said at the DDA meeting, Mary, that you'll remember is it's kind of like the city employee parking that's around here. I don't know what the arrangement actually is, but let's assume that there was going to be 3-hour parking for city employees, but there's plenty of parking behind the public safety. I mean, so you can go there, and I know it's raining and all that, but so what? I mean, you don't want to park here and run the risk of not getting out there in time to move your car, and you got a ticket for parking over 3 hours. I mean, if that makes any sense. But on his presentation, and some of this has been covered, that first of all, he said, you know, that the parking was located in the middle of the block. Well, that's not true. It's not located in the middle of the block in the first block. It's not located in the middle of the block in the third block. Both of those are on the ends. The only block that it's even close to being in the middle, and it's not really in the middle, is the second block. Why? I mean, I don't know. I don't think Jeremy knows. Whoever decided when they decided where they were going to put parking and limit parking and all that, I don't know who made that decision or when they made it, but that's when that was decided. And you know, decisions can be changed. You know, it's discriminatory. There is no question about it. In the Anna's house lot, the first 2 rows are closest to the Grand Theater condos. And those people park their second cars, their family comes over, their friends come over. They never have to worry about 3-hour parking because they can park there, go in, stay a day, 2, 3, it doesn't matter. You know, my tenants cannot do that.
But
And
Doug, couldn't your tenants park in those spots too?
No, Mayor, you live right there. Tomorrow morning, look out your window. Our lot is completely empty. And that lot, those first 2 rows in that lot are completely full. And the first 2 rows over by the Armory are completely full. And that's because those are condos, exactly right. So the condo people dominate those, and the people that are residents at the Copper of 100 Washington have, Jeremy's right, they can park over at Tip. They can park across. There is not one, look at your map, there is not one single lot on the north side of Washington that's 3-hour parking limited. It's all discriminatorily assigned to the south side, and then, I don't know who made those decisions, but it's discriminatory by the condos. It's discrimination. I mean, pure and simple. I challenge you to go today. It's raining and so on. Go park in the Tip lot and walk. It's only a half a block. You're carrying your groceries and it's raining, but no big deal because you don't want to have to go up and drop your groceries, come back down and move your car because you don't want to get a ticket. And Ashley's been here a number of times, that poor girl. I mean, she is struggling. I've helped her as much as I can whenever I can. But she gets so frustrated, as you witnessed tonight, because she's been ticketed. And I've been ticketed. I told you that before. I come for a short, I just got to go in, get something done, and next thing, one thing leads to another, and I come out and there's a ticket on my car. It's like, my fault. I'm not asking for designated parking. I'm not asking for any restrictions. That's what Karen said. All I'm saying is, give them the same chance anybody else has. They're already paying $120 so they can park overnight. Please, just think about what they have to go through. And I challenge you, take your car down there on some rainy day, go park in the Tip lot and walk over to our building and walk back and say, oh yeah, this is okay, no problem. Instead of being able to park closest to where they live, or at least have the chance to park closest where they live. Please, I ask you to reconsider that. Thank you.
Jim Hagan, 400 Lake. I'd also like to just talk a little bit about parking and so forth. I mentioned that I had gone to the recruitment and retention meeting. The reason I'd gone there was to support some of the business owners on that first block whose business was being hurt by the closure of the street. I saw Jeremy's maps and so forth. So we have the 2 rows that are closest to those retail businesses basically being occupied full-time by condo owners. Guess what? You know how many parking spots are taken by the restaurant and beverage industry now? 22, and that does include 2 motorcycle spots. So we've heard all evening, pretty much for the last year, how parking is this huge issue. We have premier parking spots there, but because we want to, I guess, maybe be a cool city, USA, and have maybe one of the biggest social districts, we're just giving them away to the business. It's totally wrong. We should not repeat it. Thank you.
Okay, now, meeting adjourned. Thanks, guys.